Chapter 25:55. The sage's eyes stared at the demon empress for a long, long time. Suddenly, the anger on his face gradually dissipated, and he let out a long breath. He laughed softly. Since Exeter is so kind, this seat naturally has to drink this tea. Please, come to the extreme heaven. Of course, it's still my treat. The demon empress' heart couldn't help but tremble. In a very short time, Cloud Master had recovered his normal attitude. He was affable and amiable. This kind of forbearance, this kind of accomplishment, this kind of self-control, all made the demon empress' heart tremble. She smiled and said, "Your Majesty, the sage is really too polite. Since that's the case, please." The two smiled at each other and floated down from the distant sky. Almost at the beginning of the two's separation, Cloud Master immediately issued an order. Mobilize secret forces to kill the demon empress with all their strength. At the same time, the experts of the Extreme Heaven Saint Palace were dispatched in large numbers, rushing to the big western sky. Several other orders transmitted to the other heavens and earth were also issued. All organizations with the name Heavenly Armament Pavilion in the Heavenly Imperial Court are to be banned. Anyone who dares to resist is to be eliminated immediately. Then, the sage left the extreme heaven. The sage's reason for leaving was very simple. One of the three big bases was already gone, and even the doppelganger he had arranged had been beaten to death. Naturally, there was no need to go there again. The people who did it there would definitely escape upon hearing the news. They definitely wouldn't wait there for him to retaliate. And the real top priority right now was to prevent the other two bases from being destroyed by the enemy forces one by one. In each base, apart from the three Devil Masters and a doppelganger, the others were all still in the process of nurturing the myriad Saint True Spirits that hadn't really taken shape. It could be said that they still hadn't formed a high-end resistance, especially facing the people who had done it this time. Since they had the ability to destroy one of the bases, they naturally had the ability to destroy the other two. They obviously already possessed this kind of strength. Although the sage wasn't clear about the true strength of the people who had done it this time, he knew that one of the three big bases he had hidden had been completely destroyed. In other words, the matter of him nurturing the myriad Saint True Spirits was no longer a secret to some people. Since the secret was no longer a secret and was already known by people, the sage was no longer afraid and no longer worried about the secret being leaked. Since the mask of hypocrisy had been torn apart, then he would be an evil person through and through. Since you're forcing me to go to the extreme, you'll have to bear my wrath. For over 1,000,000 years, no one has ever dared to provoke me like this. Back then, the only person who provoked me was Jianghu. Even if he was a celestial emperor, even if he had the help of Donghuang Shui Leihan from another world, he was still toyed to death by me. His fate will be the same as yours, or even more miserable than his. I will make everything you do from now on become a trap for you to bury your bones. The sage didn't stay any longer, and turned around to leave. His eyes were ice cold. And from this moment onwards, the sage had truly changed. Because he no longer needed to deliberately conceal it. The selfless holy monarch who had torn off his mask would be even more terrifying, extremely terrifying. Perhaps you can control a few heavens and earth now. Perhaps you have the East Emperor Demon Empress as a strong ally. Perhaps your growth is fast enough. Perhaps you think that you already have the ability to go against me. But I want to use facts to tell you that the current you is not enough, far from enough. I'm no longer the superior Cloud who couldn't do anything against Jianghu and Shui Leihan. To what extent 1,000,000 years old myriad Saint True Spirit will nurture me, and to what extent it will nourish me. You, people who have never cultivated myriad Saint True Spirit will never be able to imagine. My 1,000,000 years of hard work, my 1,000,000 years of training, will create a peerless expert that no one has ever seen before. You will never be able to imagine it. Since you've chosen to tear everything apart today, then you will definitely taste the consequences of rashly tearing open scars. In the valley, on the afternoon of the first day, Mo Tianji forcefully used heavy pills to recover himself. Then he started to repair the array, and even further changed the nebula locking array. The moment Mo Tianji finished repairing the array, everyone was dumbfounded by the changes in front of them, because this mountain range was actually changing at a speed visible to the naked eye. A towering mountain range was undergoing visible changes. What kind of scene was that? Was the earth cracking and the mountains collapsing? Was it earth-shattering? Was it an earthquake? Or was it all happening at once? A series of muffled sounds rang out one after another. Creak, creak, creak. The originally towering mountain range suddenly slowly sank into the ground. Well, perhaps this couldn't be said to be sinking. Instead, it was condensing and strengthening once again, shrinking inwards. In the end, the basin that was thousands of acres was actually condensed to less than 50 acres. It was only about 50 mu in radius, which was definitely not a big place. The surrounding mountain range also shrunk without exception. It had shrunk by more than 100 times. It was as neat as a knife, and there wasn't any place for climbing. The entire valley was like a vertical penholder. As far as the eye could see, this was already a normal mountain. In fact, it was even more inconspicuous than a normal mountain. Above, the nebula locking array had been refined and improved by Mo Tianji. It was truly difficult for immortals to enter. Mo Tianji's master of manipulation and ghostly calculation and master of the world weren't just for show. He was completely confident that even if a saint monarch came personally, he wouldn't be able to break through the mountain under the nebula locking array. His arrangement was to guard against a saint monarch's surprise attack. The base was suddenly destroyed. No one could predict the saint monarch's reaction. If he rushed here to find traces of the culprit, wouldn't he be caught in the act? This was also a reasonable reaction. Moreover, the brothers' injuries hadn't healed yet. Even if they were fully healed, would they be able to confront the true number one person of the Heaven Palace Imperial Court? Previously, when they faced the Saint Monarch's clone, they were all injured. Big brother Chu Yang's cultivation was almost crippled. If at this moment, the sage were to really come to this place and make a big move, then it would really be a complete wipeout. There would be no room for luck. This time, Mo Tianji had used up all his energy and mental strength to maintain this arrangement. However, for a few days, the Saint Monarch didn't come. On the 10th day, the Saint Monarch still didn't come. Everyone could finally be sure of one thing. At this time, if the Saint Monarch still didn't come, then he probably wouldn't come. Everyone's hearts that had been hanging in suspense were finally put down. Of course, Mo Tianji's support this time wasn't in vain. Even if this place couldn't become a fortress against the Saint Monarch, it would create a real paradise for the Heaven Palace Imperial Court in the future. Moreover, it would be an absolutely safe and quiet paradise. After confirming that the Saint Monarch wouldn't attack, everyone was even more relieved to heal their injuries. Chu Yang was still lying quietly. His mind was wandering and he didn't wake up. However, everyone wasn't too worried. This was because Chu Yang's complexion was getting better and better by the day. Her originally ghastly pale and bloodless face slowly began to glow with a hint of redness. It was almost no different from a normal healthy person's complexion. Everyone was a cultivator. Naturally, they knew that although Chu Yang didn't wake up immediately, he must be using a special method to heal his injuries that no one knew of. Moreover, he was still in a state of improvement. Being in this state could only be a good thing. It definitely wouldn't be a bad thing. It was just that they didn't know if it had anything to do with Chu Yang. Things that made everyone feel even more strange happened one after another. First of all, the spiritual energy in this world gradually became abnormally rich. Speaking of which, this place could originally be considered a holy land for cultivation. The spiritual energy was abnormally rich. It was more than 10 times stronger than ordinary places. However, recently, the spiritual energy's richness had gradually decreased to an outrageous level. According to Tai Butian's judgment, even when she was cultivating in the special space with Chu Yang back then, the spiritual energy's richness was only slightly better. Moreover, the spiritual energy's richness in this place showed signs of increasing. It was as if there was something mysterious here that could attract spiritual energy. It was attracting the spiritual energy of heaven and earth to slowly but persistently gather here. In the first few days, it was just a gradual change. Although everyone felt it, it wasn't obvious. However, from the first day onwards, this change began to intensify and was out of control. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth gushed madly into this small valley, as if it was going to explode with spiritual energy. The top of the valley became shrouded in clouds and mist. However, later on, there would be light rain falling from time to time. This was actually a sign that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had already reached a certain level in the sky above the valley. After being infected by the clouds and mist, it turned into raindrops and fell down. These raindrops weren't ordinary raindrops. They were completely liquid spiritual energy water. In other words, in this valley, the spiritual energy was gradually condensing into a substance, turning from a gaseous state to a liquid state. When everyone tasted such rainwater, they were all stunned. How could there be such pure spiritual energy in this world? They could feel their spirits being lifted with just a sip. If they continued to drink, it was as if their bodies were being reborn. Although it still couldn't be compared to the spring of life, which was a transcendent divine item, it had an unimaginable effect on cultivation. Third brother Mo, everyone surrounded Motianji, their faces full of admiration. It's one thing for you to be able to gather the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth using formations, but for you to be able to gather the spiritual energy of the heavens and the earth to such an extent, it's really too high, too amazing. I really admire you. Chapter 25:56. This valley was not like this when they first arrived. It was completely different. Everyone had seen it with their own eyes. Moreover, Motianji had directly used the power of the stars to shrink this valley. Everyone had seen it with their own eyes. Before Motianji set up the formation, this kind of change did not appear at all. There was also no sign of the spiritual energy increasing. But after Motianji set up the formation, this phenomenon happened. If this change had nothing to do with Motianji, then who could it be? Apart from the master of calculation and manipulation, who else could have such a miraculous method to change the world? The corners of Motianji's mouth twitched as he faced the compliments of his brothers. He could only force a smile. I enjoy everyone's compliments and reverence. I also hope that this change was caused by me. That way, I can receive everyone's compliments and reverence with a clear conscience. It's a pity that this change has nothing to do with me. The great nebula locking formation was indeed laid down by me. But the change in the spiritual energy in this valley wasn't caused by me. The great nebula locking formation does not have this effect. Not you? Everyone opened their mouths wide. Everyone was confused. They scratched their heads in confusion. If it's not Motianji, who else can it be? We don't seem to have such capabilities. The other possible culprit is still unconscious. Yet, such a miraculous phenomenon is happening just like that. Furthermore, it's getting more and more obvious and exaggerated with each passing day. What is going on? I understand. Since it was not caused by trickster Mo, this is the only explanation. GMO slapped his thigh. He seemed to have suddenly understood. Everyone turned their heads and looked at this guy who clearly had a penetrating insight. They were all listening to his brilliant insights. It must be like this. There must be a peerless treasure that has never been seen before hidden under the ground of this valley. GMO said proudly, and this treasure has always been underground. It has never been exposed. Therefore no one knows about it. And this time, Motianji set up the formation and changed the landscape. He forcibly shrank the boundary, creating an unprecedented pressure. And this treasure underground is afraid of being squeezed. This treasure cannot stand it anymore. That's right, in order to survive, it began to gather the spiritual energy of heaven and earth towards itself. Everyone fainted at the same time. Was there such a treasure? Afraid of crowding? Why don't you say that you're afraid of pressure? GMO had a card up his sleeve. Let me explain it to you in detail. Well, how should I put it? Let's make an analogy. You're a tree. You've been taking root comfortably, but the density of the land has increased to a terrifying extent. Even your roots can't penetrate it. Not only was he unable to enter, he was even squeezed in. If you can't even come out, how are you going to deal with it? Naturally, we have to think of ways to fight against it. Gathering the spiritual chi of heaven and earth to strengthen ourselves is naturally the best choice. Or let's say, if a person has been living in a big house all this time, but one day, the house suddenly shrinks to the point where you can't even turn your butt around, or even completely surround you, how would you deal with it? And this is definitely the case with the treasure in this area. Ji Mo's eloquence was torrential, and he was actually citing examples from ancient scriptures to explain. Although everyone still felt that this explanation was a little unreliable, but after careful consideration, it seemed that there was still a bit of fallacy in it. Therefore, they were half convinced and half doubtful. Then where do you think the treasure is now? Everyone blinked their eyes. It's underground, within the range of this 50 mu of land. The closer it is to the center, the more likely it is. GMO vowed solemnly. He pointed at his feet and said, "Let's first dig a hole in the center. There's a high chance that we'll be able to dig it out. Brothers, then we'll be rich." It's equivalent to carrying a super treasure that can gather a large amount of spiritual chi. Motianji snorted disdainfully at this explanation. GMO, don't blindly think about it. The people of the Saint Monarch have been guarding here day and night for hundreds of thousands of years. Not only are there 3 devil masters guarding here, there's also a clone of the Saint Monarch. If there really was such a treasure, it would have been dug out long ago. Just sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. Maybe they're all idiots? Don't you think those guys are idiots? They really don't have good eyesight. GMO opened his eyes and retorted. Although he knew that Motianji's words were very reasonable, GMO would feel uncomfortable if he didn't refute him. Moreover, GMO was very confident in his own deduction. Perhaps this was the truth. Since you're so insistent, then go ahead and dig. If you dig it out, it's yours. No one will snatch it from you. I don't think you have the luck. It's not that I'm looking down on you, but you, GMO, really don't have the luck. Motianji rolled his eyes and continued to recuperate. Speaking of which, everyone's injuries had recovered a lot in the past few days. However, they were still far from being completely healed. Motianji's recovery was the slowest. He had to drag his sick body to set up the formation. His spiritual chi had not recovered and was even more damaged. Naturally, his recovery was slower than the others. Let's dig then. When we dig out the treasure, it's all mine. GMO was ruthless. He was provoked by Motianji's words and could not back down. What do you mean by not having the luck? What do you mean by not having the luck? I'll dig it out for you to see. GMO began to work that night. Everyone crossed their arms and watched the excitement from the side. After Motianji joined in, those who originally supported GMO gave up the idea of supporting him. None of you are helping now. When I dig it out, don't snatch it from me. GMO pleaded for a long time. However, no one helped him. He could only threaten them fiercely. Just dig it out. When you dig it out, it's naturally yours. We're just here to watch the show. Dong Wuxiang crossed his arms and swayed back and forth. That's right. No matter what, we're both celestial emperors now. Why would we snatch it from you? Xie Dan Qiong pretended to be arrogant. GMO continued to dig. The ground was too solid. Even though GMO had the strength of a high-level saint, he hadn't fully recovered from his injuries. Therefore, he didn't dare to use his full strength. He could only dig like an ordinary person. Although his progress wasn't slow, it wasn't fast either. Everyone joined in the fun and commanded, "Dig over here. Maybe it's here, over there. I vaguely feel that the spiritual energy there is denser. Dig deeper. Idiot. Over here." GMO was really ruthless this time. He was determined to dig out the treasure. He put in all his effort and worked hard. With his high-level Saint Cultivation, he was digging from the inside. Although this ground was strengthened by the Lucky Lock formation, it was still digging from the inside. When he exerted his full strength, his progress was still quite fast. Of course, this was only in comparison to GMO's level of cultivation. If it was an ordinary person, even a celestial being level expert, it was hard to say whether they could dig such a big hole. Even if they could, they would probably be half paralyzed from exhaustion. After a day and a night, GMO dug a big hole with a radius of 3 to 5 miles. He dug until the underground spring water gushed out. However, he dug until he reached an underground river. The river water was ice cold. It soared into the sky like a fountain. However, he still did not dig out anything. On the contrary, the more he dug, the thinner the spiritual energy underground. GMO resentfully stopped digging and jumped out. He saw that the people who hadn't wanted to help were moving the stones that they had dug out in another direction under Mo Tianji's command. Moreover, they were gradually piling up the stones. The big hole that GMO dug gradually formed a small lake due to the gradual filling of the underground water. The clear water was very cute. This GMO was covered in mud and looked very pathetic. He blinked and asked, "What are you all doing?" Mo Tianji kept saying that this place lacks a lake. It's not beautiful enough, and there's no place to store spiritual energy. Dong Wuxiang held back his laughter. Isn't it just nice that you need to dig a hole to do labor? So, everyone simply handed this glorious and difficult task to you. You really lived up to everyone's expectations. You successfully dug out a lake. With your own strength, you dug out a scenic lake in a day and a night. What a great harvest. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. Haha. Everyone laughed together. Even Mo Qingwu and Tai Budian, who came out to watch because Chu Yang had not woken up, also pursed their lips and smiled when they saw this scene. They could not help but laugh. GMO opened his mouth but could not say anything. After a long time, he spat and scolded angrily. So, not only have you all been acting stupid these few days, you even treated me as a worker. You all are really good, really, brothers? I finally know you all. Everyone laughed. Who asked you to insist on digging for treasures? You insisted that there must be treasures below? We didn't say that. Besides, you asked for it yourself. We didn't force you, right? GMO was tongue-tied. He stood there and was directly petrified. After a while, he said angrily, "If Mo Tianji didn't provoke me, would I have dug? I've been tricked by that swindler." Everyone laughed even harder. Why didn't we fall for it? Isn't it because of you? While they were talking, Mo Tianji walked out with his white robe fluttering. He exclaimed, "Wow, what a beautiful lake, what a beautiful scenery. GMO, you're indeed an expert at digging holes. I'm impressed. I announce that from now on, this lake will be called GMO Lake." With one sentence from Mo Tianji, lonely lake appeared in this world. But this lake was indeed lonely. Not to mention that it was sealed inside, there was indeed only one lake in the world with such abundant spiritual energy. Of course, no one would know that this lonely lake would cause a huge commotion in the future. Chapter 2557. GMO was fooled, and after hearing such sarcastic remarks, he couldn't hold it in anymore. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. "I'll beat you to death, you swindler. You're full of evil tricks. Gigolo, you don't have any good intentions. You're so bad." The two of them immediately got into a fight. Both of them had yet to recover from their injuries, and they were evenly matched at this moment. GMO even had a slight advantage because of his anger. Mo Qingwu and the other girls all loved beauty. Although they knew that they wouldn't be able to stay here for long, they still built 2 pavilions on the lake even if they only stayed for a while. Anyway, with their cultivation, building a few pavilions was just like playing around. At a glance, the water was green, and the fountain rushed up to the sky, then fell down again, smashing on the newly built pavilions, and then scattered everywhere, like pieces of broken jade jumping continuously. And in the pavilions, whether it was talking about the world or drinking tea and discussing Tao, they were all happy and contented. Therefore, all the men sneered at this in their hearts. Women like this kind of thing. However, they still had to pretend that they liked it very much. Their mouths were constantly praising it. What elegance! But they were cursing in their hearts. Can this broken thing be eaten or drunk? What can it be used for? It would be better to fight with GMO. Everyone's noses and faces will be swollen. Since the appearance of this lake, the changes in the entire valley were even more obvious. Previously, because Mo Tianji used the nebula locking formation to forcefully suppress all the plants in this valley, they couldn't withstand such overwhelming pressure. Because they were unable to bear the unprecedented pressure, all of them turned into powder, and not a trace of green could be seen. And with the appearance of the lake, spiritual energy poured into the lake like a tide, and then spread out again. Slowly, a green grassland appeared around the lake at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lush and verdant, like green satin, gradually extended outwards. This green seemed to be spreading. The surrounding mountains were also slowly dyed green. There were even slender little saplings. They grew very tenaciously. The brothers, who were originally very impatient, suddenly felt a kind of vibration when they saw this green grass slowly crawling all over the ground. With such a high density of soil, it was extremely difficult for plants to survive and grow in it. Everyone could imagine it. Living in such a place was undoubtedly millions of times more difficult than living in the outside world. However, the grass was still grass, still dark green, still facing the wind, full of vitality. That kind of exuberant joy and emotion instantly surged into everyone's hearts. This group of men who had long been accustomed to fighting and killing in Jianghu. At this moment, everyone fell silent. A sense of enlightenment lingered in everyone's hearts. Is this the power of the pulse of life? So this is how the origin feels. Mo Tianji squatted down and looked at the ground in a trance. Xiao Chao, who was as thin as a strand of hair, had a look of worship in her eyes. If humans were placed in such a harsh environment, would they be able to work so hard to survive? People can also strive to survive in desperate situations. Mo Tianji silently said to himself. Mo Tianji's thinking might not be wrong, but the bad nature of human desires caused most people to only wake up at the last moment of despair. They would only choose to face it when they were truly faced with despair. Humans had always been like this. 3 days later, the entire valley had undergone a complete makeover. However, no one had been able to find the source of its mysteries. Just what was it that had caused such a drastic change to occur in this valley? However, in these few days, everyone's body and mind became very quiet. Looking at the grass that was tenaciously struggling to grow every day, everyone's heart was touched to varying degrees. It was a kind of reverence towards the pulse of life that arose spontaneously. With such a mentality, everyone was surprised to find that their cultivation, which was previously stuck at a bottleneck, was actually advancing by leaps and bounds. Although the internal and external injuries from the previous battle had not yet healed, but his cultivation seemed to have grown wings, and had soared forward. In this short half a month, GMO and Luo Kadi had officially completed the advancement from high-level saint to peak saint. They had also completely stabilized their cultivation at the peak saint level and even had energy to spare. Especially GMO. Since he was seriously injured and on the verge of death, Chu Yang spared no expense to use great medicine to strengthen his foundation. He drank the spring of life every day and ate heavy pills as if they were his meals. His entire physical body was almost on the verge of a qualitative change. Now, under the continuous scouring of such rich spiritual energy, his aptitude and foundation had actually changed in one fell swoop. He had transformed into an innate spirit body. Such a shocking change meant that Ji Mo's aptitude was on the same starting line as Gu Duxing, Dong Wushang and the others, or even better. His future was limitless. This change made GMO so excited that he almost went crazy. It also made Luo Kadi so jealous that he almost went crazy. He wished that he was the one who was injured last time. He kept sighing that he had come too late last time. He was actually not injured and not on the verge of death. He actually let GMO take advantage of him. Such an argument naturally made the brothers laugh out loud. In addition, Big Sister Wolf King, the sacrificial maiden's cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds these few days. She was also at the point where she could step into the peak of the saint stage. And the ones who improved the most were still Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian. Both of them had once held great power in their hands and were once the masters of the world. Coming down from that kind of peak position and then seeing this change. The change in their mentality was the most unique. It was a feeling of appreciation, gratification, happiness, calmness and serenity, the cultivation level of both of them advanced all the way from the high level of the saint stage to the peak of the high level of the celestial stage. It was only when they were about to break through to the saint stage that their progress gradually slowed down. Such a degree of improvement made the eyes of Mo Tianji and the others almost pop out of their sockets. Although the original level of the two women was at the bottom of the pack. Wasn't this degree of improvement too exaggerated? And the other one who had obvious improvement was Mo Qingwu. Mo Qingwu had already advanced to the late level of the peak of the saint stage. Mo Tianji and the others were puzzled by the improvement of the three women. Even with such a dense spiritual energy atmosphere, it shouldn't be and even more impossible for them to improve so quickly. This was completely inconceivable progress. Even if the spiritual energy density was maintained at this level, logically speaking, Wu Qianqian and Tai Budian would need at least 2 years of diligent cultivation to be able to reach their current level. It was just a possibility. But now, it only took a few days from start to finish. There must be something fishy about this. Could it be that they were giving preferential treatment to people? Giving preferential treatment to beautiful women? That couldn't be right. Although Chu Le and Sacrificial Maiden had also made astonishing progress in these few days, it was still within the scope of everyone's knowledge. Even if it was astonishing, it wouldn't be as shocking as the progress of Tai Budian and the other two women. But no matter what, they couldn't figure out what the problem was. This made Mo Tianji, who wanted to explore the mystery the most, so much that his head almost exploded. He yearned to find such a path the most. It allowed the cultivation of all his brothers and family members to improve by leaps and bounds. Now, this path had clearly appeared and was within reach. But no matter what, he didn't know how to take it. An unattainable thing was right in front of him. How could he not be depressed? Speaking of which, Tai Budian, Wu Qianqian and Mo Qingwu, who had made the greatest progress, were also baffled by their own progress. They didn't know what was going on at all. Progress in cultivation was a common thing. Once you started cultivating, you would improve. Once you started cultivating, you would improve. Although their progress in these few days was a little too excessive, they really didn't know what was going on. This was really strange, until this day. Mo Tianji, who had been thinking for half the night, frowned and walked into Chu Yang's room. What he hoped for the most now was to see Chu Yang wake up and discuss this extremely strange matter with Chu Yang. The moment he walked into the room and looked up to see Chu Yang, Mo Tianji suddenly understood everything. It turned out that the source that couldn't be found for a long time was actually here. In that instant, he opened his eyes to the maximum. Without the limitation of his eye sockets, his eyeballs might have popped out. With a big stride, he rushed to the front of Chu Yang's bed like lightning. I understand now. I finally understand. I understand everything. Mo Tianji's voice was almost trembling. What do you understand? Why are you making such a big fuss in the morning? Tai Budian, Wu Qianqian and Mo Qingwu, who had been accompanying Chu Yang, were suddenly shocked by Mo Tianji. The change this time, everyone's amazing progress in cultivation, including the changes in the spiritual energy outside, it's all because of Boss. Mo Tianji said, no wonder the three of you have made the greatest progress in cultivation. It's because you've always been by Chu Yang's side. One is marked by the company one keeps. This analogy is not very appropriate. The pavilion closest to the water enjoys the moon first? I don't care anymore. Anyway, you guys are improving so much faster than others. The three women couldn't help but be shocked. The three of them had indeed been in this room for more than half a month, but they didn't feel anything unusual. Because the three of them had to take care of Chu Yang, they seemed to have less time to cultivate than others. Look at Chu Yang's face. Look at his hair and feel his pulse. Mo Tianji finally let out a long sigh of relief. We often do what you said. There's nothing unusual at all. The three of them said in unison. Do. Mo Tianji sighed and said, you've been with him every day. You've already gotten used to this atmosphere, so you can't see any changes. Look carefully. Don't you feel a kind of gentle feeling on Boss's face? Go out for a massage. Back pain. I'll come back and update later. It's impossible for me to explode today. Little explosion, he. Little explosion, he. Chapter 2558. Look at his hair again. When he was unconscious, didn't it show a kind of dim vitality? But now, it's all black and shiny? And his forehead, the meridians here are faintly visible. It seems like there's a brilliance flowing through them. We're all experts in cultivation. I don't need to explain what this means, right? Check his pulse. Isn't it already faintly dispensable? It's definitely different from when he's full of vitality. Mo Tianji looked at his sister with disappointment. Their cultivation is still a level lower. It's fine if they can't see it, but why can't you see it? Mo Qingwu pouted. Why should I see it? Second brother's words are too unreasonable. Is it a fault to have a high cultivation? This guy doesn't know how to do anything other than bully my sister. Chu Yang is still the best to me. A certain king of hell can receive the good guy card when he's unconscious. His charm is obvious. The most obvious change is, although the spiritual energy outside doesn't seem to have changed, every pore on Chu Yang's body is quietly forming a very mysterious vortex. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth is attracted by these vortexes, and then it enters his body. So the closer to him, the greater the benefits. Mo Tianji stretched out his hand to feel. Finally, he frowned with some confusion. But how can these small vortexes attract such a large amount of spiritual energy and cause such a big movement? There should be other mysteries as well. Then, second brother, do you mean that Chu Yang is going to wake up soon? Mo Qingwu suddenly became happy. Her own cultivation progress was certainly something to be happy about, but it couldn't be compared to Chu Yang waking up. Not necessarily. But looking at his current situation, his injuries have been healed. Moreover, his body is undergoing some kind of earth-shaking change. Or maybe he's advancing to a level that we can't imagine. Either way, it's a good thing. Then why can't he wake up immediately? He's been unconscious for a long time. If he continues to be unconscious, won't it affect his bodily functions? Mo Qingwu asked. Mo Tianji solemnly said, absolutely not. Right now, he seems to be unconscious, but in reality, he should be in some kind of extremely miraculous realm. And when he wakes up, it should be the time for him to make a complete breakthrough. All of you must not disturb him in any way. Be careful of doing bad things with good intentions. Even after saying this, he was still worried. He said, you must remember this. Mo Qingwu and the other two nodded solemnly. Something that Mo Tianji had emphasized over and over again must be an extremely important matter. The three of them just needed to greet each other as usual. He would never act rashly. Mo Tianji exhorted a few more words. Then he went out in a relaxed manner. Not to mention anything else, at least he could sleep soundly today. That's not right. I don't think I'll be able to sleep today. It's better to hurry up and arrange the important matters. As for sleeping, I'll think about it when I'm free. Then, Mo Tianji hurriedly arranged for his brothers to practice martial arts. Everyone gathered outside the room where Chu Yang was, forming a circle. Everyone entered a meditative state. Mo Tianji was sure that cultivating in this relatively close area would definitely be much faster than cultivating in their own rooms. Just as Mo Tianji had guessed, the effect was indeed quite significant. Everyone could clearly feel that their cultivation was really improving, and it was improving by a considerable margin. However, Mo Qingwu, Tai Butian, and Wu Qianqian in the room felt extremely uncomfortable and even a little embarrassed. This room was originally a private space for the four of them. It was natural for them to be inside. However, there were so many people outside meditating in the corner, that kind of feeling was really uncomfortable. It was as if someone was eavesdropping on their wedding night. Because of this, Mo Qingwu even rushed out and quarreled with Mo Tianji, intending to make everyone leave. However, Mo Tianji was completely unmoved. He didn't change his order. You're also cultivating inside. What's there to be embarrassed about? Mo Tianji looked at his sister angrily. Moreover, boss is unconscious now. Even if he wants to, he's powerless. What's the big deal? You're just too troublesome. Mo Qingwu was scolded until her veins were bulging. She went back in with a red face. However, she brought out Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qian again. Mo Tianji definitely didn't dare to be as rash towards Tai Bu Tian and Wu Qian as he did towards his own sister. He smiled and said, "Sisters-in-law, don't be angry. We're really helpless in this situation. In the face of a strong enemy, we have to speed up our overall strength. Who knows, we might be intercepted by a strong enemy like the Saint. With our current strength, we're like ants compared to them. It's rare to have such a heaven-sent opportunity. It's really a pity to waste it. Sisters-in-law, please understand." What he said was reasonable. Wu Qian and Tai Bu Tian were also at their wits' end. Helpless, they might as well speed up their cultivation by Chu Yang's bedside. When Chu Yang woke up, they would deal with these hateful guys outside. The three girls blushed and thought hatefully. Especially Mo Tianji. This time, he was completely hated by the three of them. In the past, when they watched Chu Yang sleep soundly in the dead of night, they would occasionally sneak a kiss on him, but now, not to mention a kiss, they didn't even dare to look at him for a moment. Outside, they were all peak-level saints. What sound couldn't they hear? They couldn't sense any movement at all. Damn Mo Tianji. Just you wait. We sisters will remember you. Mo Tianji, who didn't know that he had already been remembered, was still studying. Although Chu Yang had become a powerful energy absorber and absorbed a huge amount of spiritual energy, the effect shouldn't be so exaggerated. There must be other reasons for this. Looking at the plants outside changing day by day, Mo Tianji was still thinking. Finally, on this day, early in the morning, everyone felt it at the same time. The spiritual qi in this small world began to roll and surge without any warning. Just a moment ago, it was still calm and peaceful. Spiritual energy slowly poured in, rippling in an orderly manner. However, in the blink of an eye, the clouds above began to surge. Then, the sound of wind suddenly rose. Then, as if a hole had opened in the blue sky, the spiritual energy in the sky surged into the valley like a tsunami. Those that couldn't land in time stayed in the clouds. In the next moment, a torrential rain began to pour down from the sky. This torrential rain was 100% spiritual qi transformed into water. It could be seen that the spiritual energy in this world had reached an unimaginable level. In the next moment, the spiritual energy seemed to have its own consciousness. Like rivers flowing into the sea, it violently poured into the room where Chu Yang was and instantly disappeared without a trace. Just like that, a huge amount of spiritual energy poured in and disappeared again. It was as if the room where Chu Yang was a bottomless pit. At this moment, everyone even had a feeling that even if all the spiritual energy in the entire universe was stuffed into this room, it might not be able to fill it up. And the real reason, that went without saying, because Chu Yang was inside. Chu Yang's face and body were actually twinkling with starlight. If anyone could see the situation inside Chu Yang's body at this moment, they would definitely be shocked to discover that the dantian in Chu Yang's body had already been completely restored. In fact, it was even tougher and countless times wider than before. The huge amount of spiritual energy in this world surged into Chu Yang's dantian. Then, strands of purplish gold primordial real silk gradually formed. In just an instant, countless strands of primordial real silk had already piled up densely. Then, after the primordial real silk was slowly stuffed to the brim, it gradually transformed into a purplish gold liquid. The liquid was filled to the brim and compressed again. Finally, after a whirlwind of spiritual energy, a spinning purplish golden core appeared in each of Chu Yang's dantians. Huge amounts of spiritual energy were still pouring in without any signs of stopping, and that elixir-like golden core in Chu Yang's dantian continued to devour all the spiritual energy. Little by little, it slowly changed and seemed to be showing signs of exploding again. Fortunately, it wasn't an explosion. Accompanied by a soft sound, that little figure appeared at the same time again. His nose and eyes were clear and he was smiling from ear to ear. And with the reappearance of that little figure, the speed at which Chu Yang's dantian devoured the spiritual energy of the universe actually increased even further. It was only at this point that the breakthrough force that was previously sealed in Chu Yang's meridians was suddenly released. It rushed out forcefully and flowed throughout all the meridians in his body. In just an instant, it was already completely absorbed by his dantian. At last, a soft sound came from somewhere in Chu Yang's body. This sound was really very soft. Even if one were to stick close to him, one might not necessarily be able to hear it. But at this moment, the brothers could clearly feel that their souls had suddenly trembled violently. It was as if they were witnessing the occurrence of a miracle. And this miracle had already happened and was currently happening right beside them. Everyone's heart was filled with a kind of heartfelt joy. Although they didn't know what exactly it was for, it was a feeling of extreme bliss. It was as if something that had been lost had once again returned. And it was even stronger and more reliable. It was even more wholehearted and wholehearted. No one knew that right at this moment, the little figures in Chu Yang's dantian were waving their hands and feet and burping at the same time. Every one of them looked very satisfied. Then, all of them actually exploded at the same time. They turned into countless bright purple specks of light. At the same time, Chu Yang's dantian underwent a huge change. From the original nascent soul world, it became a nebula world. Today is Wild Waves' birthday. Let us wish him a happy birthday. Does everyone still remember Lang Yilong? Wild Waves Lang Yilong. Cough. This guy's walk-on. Let us wish Wild Waves Lang Yilong the best. Wild Waves Lang Yilong gets stronger year by year. Each new wave surpasses the previous one. Both the Yangtze River and the sea are waves. Chapter 2559. The nebula world was like a firmament that existed in Chu Yang's body. The firmament was boundless and filled with nebulas. Stars dotted the sky and it was extremely beautiful. The next moment, an unprecedentedly powerful aura swept out. It was a feeling of a king descending to the world and a warm spring breeze. Chu Yang had broken through. To Imo Tianji and the rest, Chu Yang had always been in a state of deep sleep. It was as if he hadn't done anything at all. But to Chu Yang himself, he clearly knew what he was doing. Yes, Chu Yang was now immersed in an inexplicable sense of extreme comfort. He was almost subconsciously circulating the layered heavens divine technique. He could clearly feel the entire process, from the beginning when his dantian was slowly reorganizing, all the way until his nascent soul turned into a nebula. It was just that rather than saying that Chu Yang was a participant, it was more like saying that he was a spectator. This was undoubtedly an extremely magical feeling. At the same time, it was also an indescribable and thorough cultivation atmosphere. He watched helplessly as his seemingly incurable and destructive injuries slowly recovered bit by bit. He didn't even use any elixirs or circulate any healing techniques during this period. What kind of feeling was this? Opening the door to the great Tao is omnipotent. Chu Yang truly felt this. It was indeed omnipotent. He could feel that with the continuous influx of spiritual energy, with the continuous birth of new life such as plants and insects, the joy of obtaining the pulse of life was slowly being fed back while Chu Yang was fully immersed in it. Because of Chu Yang, these things were born, and after they were born, they began to feed back. Fed back by the environment, fed back by nature, fed back by the power of the pulse of life, they were collectively fed back by all the life in the world. If it were a human, seeing that there was no hope for such an incurable injury, they would probably give up immediately. This was an incurable injury. This had long become an understanding. But for the purest life in the world, they wouldn't have such understanding and recognition. An injury was an injury. It was nothing more than a minor injury, a major injury, a serious injury, and a fatal injury. But an injury was still an injury. No matter how serious the injury was, it was still an injury. They only knew that a life was injured and needed to be saved. And this life was the person who had just given them life. This person who is very important to me is injured, so I have to heal him. Not only because he gave us life, but also because he acknowledged us. They didn't care if their damage output was useful or not. They were just giving their all and attacking with everything they had. Boundless vitality washed over Chu Yang's body. After circulating through Chu Yang's body, it returned once again, and then came again, even stronger. It was this intention that had created this miracle. Injuries that were impossible to heal were quickly healed under this atmosphere, turning the impossible into possible. Then he would accumulate vitality and reconstruct his dantian. An unprecedented perfect cycle was formed between Chu Yang and all things in the world. The mountains, rivers, and plants, even the stars, the sky, the firmament, and the boundless spiritual energy were all devoted to it. Everything that had life was giving their most sincere efforts to heal Chu Yang's injuries. A single drop of water might not cause any changes. Even if it was 100 or 1,000 drops, it might not be able to cause any effect. Not to mention breaking the dam, at most, it would only wet a piece of land. However, what about 100 million drops of water, or 1 billion drops of water? What about more? What would happen if 10,000 drops of water, or 100,000 drops of water that could wet the ground were gathered together? When such water droplets were gathered to a certain extent, it would cause a qualitative change due to the change in quantity. Even if the effect of a tsunami was to appear, it would only require a process of gathering. No matter how strong the dam was in the world, it would not be able to withstand the continuous impact of endless water. Collapsing was only a matter of time. It could be 10,000 years, or 1,000 years, or 100 years, or 10 years. Of course, it could also be an instant. Water was actually the most terrifying thing in the world. As the saying went, water and fire were merciless. However, flames could only burn for a while. Hundreds of people had died because of fire. This was enough to shock the world. However, no matter how big and wide a fire was, it would be difficult to burn more people. However, the number of people who had died because of floods was easily hundreds of thousands, or even millions. There was no comparison between the two. Now, the boundless spiritual energy that filled the universe, the surging power that symbolized life, was using this method. Collecting armpits to make a fur coat, accumulating sand to build a tower, collecting water droplets to form the sea, gathering all things to form the firmament. Gradually, they converged into an unstoppable torrent. When such a torrent was truly formed, the door to the great Tao that Chu Yang had been comprehending all this while coincidentally opened at this moment. Then, an enormous amount of life force gushed in. No matter where there was a gap or a flaw, he would go there to fix it. He would go there to fix it. He would go there to fix it. He would go there. Chu Yang's body was filled with an unimaginably rich aura of life. His body, which was originally riddled with scars, was being filled up, repaired, and enriched again in a very strange way. The whole process was not very fast, but it was very enriching, very perfect, and even more perfect than perfect. His dantian was restored. The golden core was formed. His nascent soul had been reborn. Nebula world, gather. Even after everything was done, countless amounts of spiritual chi were still gushing in, filling up this world with the nebula as the main body. The skies of these nebula worlds were vast and beautiful, but the ground was just a desert. It could be said that other than the stars and the starry sky, there was nothing else. There was no sun, no moon, and the sky was dark. There were no mountains, no water, no animals, no plants, and no life in any conventional sense. A huge amount of life aura poured in, but it didn't bring any life aura to this world. As long as the life aura entered the nebula world, it would rapidly disappear without a trace. It didn't bring any changes to this world, as if that huge amount of life aura had no effect at all, but the spiritual chi was still stubbornly gushing in like a tsunami. Gushing in, gushing in, gushing in endlessly. There was only one thought, and Chu Yang's crazy absorption caused a huge whirlpool to form in the sky above the valley. A tornado-like pure life aura gushed in from the outer space as if the sky was collapsing. It entered Chu Yang's hut, and entered Chu Yang's body. It kept going back and forth, endlessly and endlessly. This change left all the brothers dumbstruck and at a loss for what to do. Now they finally understood why there was such a huge change here. It was because a boss, GMO, wanted to cry but had no tears. He looked at the lake that he had dug out because of his wishful thinking of digging for treasures. His expression was extremely conflicted. If he had known earlier that it was because of boss and not some treasure, would he have needed to put in so much effort? Putting in so much effort was one thing, but would he have needed to be ridiculed by that bastard? In short, why did he have to be so stupid? This situation continued for a day and a night. An entire day and a night. They waited all the way until dawn of the second day. Chu Yang finally opened his eyes. He had finally woken up from his deep sleep. Mo Tianji and the others who had been paying close attention to Chu Yang's movements all this time were almost directly lost in Chu Yang's gaze at this moment. Chu Yang's gaze flickered in this instant, as if a door to the stars had suddenly opened. It was full of mysterious and profound colors. Mo Qingwu couldn't help but exclaim at the sight of this. Chu Yang turned his head. "What's wrong?" His voice was full of concern. After he said that, the mysterious light in his eyes suddenly faded. In that instant, the mysterious and profound colors in Chu Yang's eyes suddenly disappeared. They regained their usual expression. "You're awake." Mo Qingwu suddenly threw herself into his arms, crying tears of joy. Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian smiled clumsily. Tears were also brewing in their eyes. They also wanted to throw themselves into Chu Yang's arms, but Mo Tianji was at the side. Mo Qingwu was one step ahead of them. The way of the heavens. In the past half a month when Chu Yang was unconscious, the three women's hearts had been under a lot of pressure. It was a kind of mood that could collapse at any time. "You didn't cry when I was unconscious. Why are you crying now that you're awake?" Chu Yang repeatedly comforted them. "Big brother, you're okay?" GMO opened his eyes wide. "You're okay? So fast?" Mo Qingwu angrily glared at him. "What do you mean by this? Don't tell me you think he's recovering too fast?" GMO was tongue-tied. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. It seemed that no matter how he answered, it would be wrong. The brothers despised him together. "This guy is too stupid. He can't even speak properly. You tell me, who can be more stupid than you?" Mo Tianji was the first to stabilize his mood. "Big brother, it seems your cultivation has also broken through?" Chu Yang nodded and said, "Yes, this time it's a blessing in disguise. My cultivation has taken a big step forward." Feeling that his body was full of power, Chu Yang only felt that his whole body was relaxed. "A big step forward?" Mo Tianji cautiously said, "How big is this step?" Everyone's eyes were burning as they looked at Chu Yang, waiting for the answer. Chu Yang pondered for a moment and said, "If I meet the East Sovereign now, I should be able to fight him." Mo Tianji let out a long sigh of relief and said, "In other words, if I meet a Saint Monarch now, there's only a fine line separating me from him?" Chu Yang cautiously said, "It should be so. I can't be sure if I don't really fight him. But no matter what, even if I meet a Saint Monarch, he can't kill me even if I can't beat him in a one-on-one fight. It shouldn't be a problem to ensure that I can escape unscathed." As soon as these words came out, the brothers all cheered thunderously. Chapter 2560. Only after reaching this level would one know how difficult it was to take another step forward. The traditional cultivation path of the Heaven Imperial Court had come to an end. If one wanted to move forward, one had to open up a new path. But how difficult was it to open up a new path? It was an unimaginable thing. That was why all the top experts of the Heaven Imperial Court stopped here. In the past, there were many people who wanted to take another step forward. But most of them could only charge forward at a loss. In the end, their bodies and souls were destroyed. Let's cut to the chase. Now, let's split into different groups. I'll tell you what you've comprehended. Chu Yang said, "It's just that how much you can comprehend depends on your own luck. Everyone should strive to improve your cultivation in the shortest time possible. I believe it will be of great help to unify the Celestial Imperial Court and even fight against the extraterrestrial demons." Everyone was excited. The first to enter was Mo Tianji. "Tianji, you're cultivating controlling the world. This technique is profound and magical. When your cultivation reaches the highest level, you can seize the creation of heaven and earth." Chu Yang deliberated for a long time and said, "But have you ever thought about why this technique is called controlling the world?" Mo Tianji thought for a while and said, "You mean," Chu Yang said, "controlling the world is obviously not complete. If you only want to control the world, then what about the heavens?" Mo Tianji was stunned. Then what about the heavens? These 5 words. To an ordinary person, this might just be a joke, and they would only extend the meaning from the surface. But to Mo Tianji, this was not the case. It was like a bolt of lightning that struck his soul. His heart, which had always been calm and tranquil, was surging with waves at this moment. It was difficult to stop them. Yes, there was often a misunderstanding in everyone's heart. That was, controlling the world was equivalent to controlling everything. Every person, thing, and thing. But very few people could think of the original explanation of the word world. Actually, it was just under the heavens. And outside of the atmosphere under the heavens, there was naturally above the heavens. If there was below, there would be above. This was the truth of the world. A truth that even a 3-year-old child understood. But most people in the world ignored it. You only controlled the world. You were already at a disadvantage. I understand. Mo Tianji opened his mouth with difficulty. But his eyes lit up. He softly said, "But how do I control this world?" Chu Yang said in a low voice, "Tell me. This world. Is it life?" Mo Tianji was startled as he heard this. Chu Yang's sudden words were completely illogical and grammatical. However, his tone was so solemn that Mo Tianji couldn't help but become solemn as well. The world has existed since ancient times. Even if it has declined and flourished, even if there have been changes in dynasties, it has always existed. Could it be that this world is actually also a type of life? Supposing the world is a living being, then, Chu Yang said slowly, can we think of it as the world and the heavens? Was it actually a shared life? Just like humans, they have a chest and a back. If this person only had his chest and not his back, then even if he cultivated his chest to the point of being indestructible and indestructible, he would still die. Because he is not complete, or rather, incomplete. The world and the heavens depend on each other. Since you don't have the heavens technique, is it destined that your cultivation technique is incomplete? Chu Yang said in a low voice. After a long time, Mo Tianji was still frowning as he pondered. He walked out of Chu Yang's room as if he was sleepwalking. Along the way, he mumbled to himself and became more and more like a charlatan. There was no need to use a heavy hammer to sound the drums. For someone like Mo Tianji, he only needed to say a few words and he would be able to completely understand. Of course, whether he could take a step further still depended on himself. Even if he had a great opportunity, he still needed to work hard. The second to enter was Dong Wuxiang. Dong Wuxiang was the strongest among the brothers present. Wuxiang, what kind of person can remain uninjured? Chu Yang's first sentence stunned Dong Wuxiang. After a while, he replied, no one can remain uninjured all the time, right? Yes, you are right. No one can remain uninjured. However, there is something that can remain uninjured all the time. Unbelievable, right? But this thing really exists, Chu Yang said slowly. Dong Wuxiang asked, huh? Is there really? Then tell me quickly, what can remain uninjured all the time? Don't beat around the bush. Chu Yang smiled and said indifferently, Dao. Dao can remain uninjured all the time. Dong Wuxiang was silent for a long time. Then he said, Dao? What Dao? Great Dao? Heavenly Dao? Saber Dao? All uninjured. Chu Yang said word by word, whatever you said, all uninjured. Dao is uninjured. Dao is uninjured? Dao is uninjured. Dong Wuxiang was stunned for a moment. He couldn't stop repeating Chu Yang's words. Yes, Dao is uninjured. Dao has its own destiny. Chu Yang said again, life. Dao is uninjured? Dao has its own destiny? Dao is uninjured. Dao has its own destiny. Dong Wuxiang was even more confused and fell into deep thought. Chu Yang continued, there is an end to heaven and earth, but Dao is endless and uninjured. When Dong Wuxiang came out, his face was also full of contemplation like Mo Tianji. The fierce aura on his body had already been restrained. It was no longer as fierce, but more condensed and restrained. Then, it was Xie Danxiong, followed by GMO, Luo Kadi, Rui Badong and the rest. Finally, Chu Yang asked about the situation of the sacrificial maiden and gave her some pointers. Then, it was Immortal. Chu Yang naturally knew Immortal very well and understood her completely. It was even easier to give her pointers. Then, it was Chu Lu, Mo Qingwu. Chu Yang had already memorized the book, the so-called Tao. He already had an idea of which direction his brothers and sisters should take in terms of their cultivation. But Chu Yang couldn't say it out loud now. He could only give them hints continuously, trigger them and inspire them to find this path on their own. That was the path that truly belonged to them. If Chu Yang pointed it out directly, it would become that they were walking the path that Chu Yang pointed out and not the path that they found themselves. Although there were only slight differences, the results were very different. It could very well affect the limits of everyone's achievements in this life. Chu Yang was still studying that book. The more he understood, the more he felt that what he understood was really too little. As for Tai Budian and Wu Chanxian, although their cultivation had increased greatly now, they were still far from Mo Tianji and the rest. The path became narrower and steeper as they walked. They gradually reached a state where there was no path to take, so they didn't need Chu Yang's pointers for the time being. In the following period of time, although everyone was anxious and wanted to go out, their old injuries hadn't completely healed. Moreover, basically everyone's state of mind had been touched by Chu Yang. Everyone needed to stabilize their own state of mind. Once they were distracted at such a time and this enlightenment was broken, not only would it cause their progress to come to a complete halt, it could also lead to the serious consequences of stopping their progress for life. Therefore, even though everyone was anxious and eager to know what was going on outside, they could only try their best to suppress their emotions and let themselves completely let go. They wholeheartedly immersed themselves in the enlightenment, hoping to achieve a breakthrough as soon as possible. Including Mo Qingwu, everyone was in seclusion, thinking hard about their own paths. After completely recovering and taking another step forward, whether it was physically or mentally, Chu Yang, Wu Chanxian, or Tai Budian naturally became the most idle people. Every day, a certain king of hell would bring the two beauties to the island in the middle of the lake to enjoy the scenery, play chess, and have fun. Those days were very comfortable. With Chu Yang presiding over here, the spiritual energy of this world not only didn't dissipate, but also became denser and denser, making people feel more and more comfortable. In just a few days on the surrounding mountains, trees had already grown to the thickness of an arm and height of several feet. These weren't the same as the plants that grew on ordinary soil outside. Even the most ordinary trees would be tens of thousands of times harder than the same kind of trees growing on such a dense soil. It was no exaggeration to say that the nutrients contained in every blade of grass here were comparable to ordinary elixirs outside. The embryonic form of a quiet and secluded world was gradually taking shape. On this day, Chu Yang had a sudden impulse. He took out a batch of the seeds of all kinds of heavenly treasures that had been nurtured by the medicine spirit in his space. He chose some relatively secluded places in this valley that were suitable for their growth. Then he sowed them in these places. He also watered them roughly with the spring of life. Jade snow spirit ginseng, nether revival grass, heaven and earth snow ganoderma, and so on. Then looking at these heavenly treasures that were growing healthily, Chu Yang said softly, "I don't know what kind of impact these things will have on the future of this world if they grow here. Perhaps they will cause a catastrophe, or perhaps they will also create another unparalleled expert. An inadvertent action today may help a latecomer create another legend." Tai Budian said softly, "Yes, I believe that since these things exist, they must have their value. Whether it's a catastrophe or becoming an expert, that's the fate of latecomers." Chu Yang nodded, expressing his agreement. Tai Budian said, "With your current level of cultivation, I believe that you already have the embryonic form of the Great Tao. Since you've decided to plant seeds here on a whim, it's not premeditated. Generally, such things will indicate that there will definitely be an encounter here in the future, This seems to be something destined from now on, Tai Budian said. Don't you think so? Chapter 2561. Chu Yang turned his head in surprise and looked at Tai Budian. He said in surprise, Tinan, although you are far from that level, your words now already have the taste of that kind of realization. Tai Budian smiled. Is that so? Her voice was actually a little downcast. Wu Qianqian also sighed quietly at this time. Chu Yang immediately understood. He held the two women in his arms and said softly, Don't be disappointed. There will be a day when both of you will not be inferior to anyone. This is what I said. I firmly believe that my little wife is not inferior to anyone. Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian smiled at the same time. Yes. Chu Yang hugged them tightly with some heartache. He said, I'm sorry. I have indeed neglected this point in the past. It's my fault. The two women smiled contentedly. You have already done very well. Whether as a man, a husband, a father, or a son, you have already done very well. Don't blame yourself. It's just that our own encounters are still a little lacking. We will catch up. Chu Yang really thought about it in his heart. Whether it was Tai Budian or Wu Qianqian, both of them had excellent aptitudes. They could be said to be geniuses. Moreover, both of them had once held high positions and commanded the world. Deep in their bones, they were the kind of people who did not think that they would be inferior to anyone. Every single one of them had the right to be proud of themselves. But after following Chu Yang, they had never encountered that kind of martial path. Being in high positions, they naturally did not have the kind of life and death tempering of the people of the martial world. Therefore, their cultivation had always been far behind others. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to the proud and arrogant women. Until they came to the Heaven Imperial Court, a world where martial arts were respected, they felt even more disappointed. But the two women had always been suppressing the disappointment in their hearts. They helped Chu Yang in other aspects in their own way and played their roles to Chu Yang. But today, when they saw that everyone else was comprehending, only the two of them could not go any further because of their insufficient level, they could not help but feel even more upset. Although the two of them also firmly believed that one day, they would eventually catch up with their footsteps. But it would take time. Chu Yang was aware of this point. He really blamed himself for his carelessness. He secretly made up his mind. In the future, he would try his best to create more opportunities for the two girls in this aspect so that they could slowly regain their confidence in martial arts. Just like in politics, in the imperial court and on the battlefield, that kind of grandeur of holding the world in his hands and ruling over the world was also present in the peak state of martial arts in front of people. In fact, no woman would be willing to just be a man's vassal. This was especially true for proud and arrogant women. Even if that man was the one she loved the most, it was still the same. Loving one's wife didn't mean that one had to satisfy all their material needs. More importantly, one had to return the sky that originally belonged to her. Let her soar in her own domain. This valley now completely belongs to all of us. Should we give it a name? Tai Budian quickly suppressed her inexplicable sense of loss and said with a smile. As a former emperor, a very qualified and perfect emperor, Tai Budian could control her emotions perfectly. After losing control a little earlier, she quickly regained her composure and took the initiative to talk about a topic that was more suitable for the current situation. All right, Chu Yang said, come and discuss a name. How about Tongtian Holy Land? Tai Budian smiled sweetly. Good name. Chu Yang and Wu Qianqian cheered at the same time. Whether it was now or in the future, after the heavenly treasures in this secret place were formed, this place would definitely be a Tongtian Holy Land. Chu Yang immediately decided to leave this name on the mountain peak. When Chu Yang used the Calamity Sword to carve these 4 words on the mountain wall, Dong Wuxiang was the first to come out of seclusion. He was in high spirits. Obviously, the initial results of this cultivation session were already showing. His cultivation had improved a lot. Everyone was the same. As long as they really found the direction of their future, they would stop this cultivation session. The reason why they didn't deliberately take a step further was because they didn't have the time. There were still many things that needed to be done outside. They might have already missed a lot during this period of time. They couldn't afford any more delays. On this day, the last sacrificial maiden also finally came out of seclusion. Everyone couldn't wait to leave the valley together. The Jianghu was probably already in chaos, right? No one knew how many things had happened in the past month or so. Before leaving the valley, Immortal once again arranged everything in this valley. He also arranged even more defensive formations in the surroundings to ensure that no one would be able to enter this place. What kind of people can enter this valley? Chu Yang asked. After I cast a spell to seal that passage. Immortal said, other than those who are at least 100 times stronger than me, only those who are blessed by the heavens can enter this place by chance. As he spoke, Immortal blinked and revealed a mischievous expression. So you're also never tired of this kind of bad taste? Chu Yang laughed. Then you must have left something else in there? Just a few words. There's nothing specific. Immortal smiled. Also, I have a feeling that in the future, who knows how many tens of thousands of years later, someone will come here and get the things inside. I can even conclude that after this person gets these things, he will definitely become a legend. Immortal said, this? Although I may not be under this sky by then, the legends here are still created by me. Just thinking about it makes me feel good. As expected, you also have this idea, ha, everyone laughed together. I really don't know what kind of person will be created here. Air looked back as she walked. She was reluctant to leave. With the density of the spiritual energy here, I'm afraid that in less than 1,000 years, it will form spirit spring stalactite. In 10,000 years, it will form spirit crystals. In 50,000 years, it will form immortal mountains and dragon veins. From then on, it will have a long history. If someone really gets it, then this person may still be able to see us in the future. After talking about such a distant place, Chu Yang thought of many people for some reason. As he said this, Chu Yang thought of the peak of the void and that majestic and magical palace. And that white-robed young man. And that evil young man that he had talked to several times before. And a name that he had mentioned before. He seemed to be called Old Black. He thought of some helper, some ethereal, something. He couldn't help but sigh and murmur, actually, there are two paths in life. One path is from life to death. The other path is from life to immortality. These two paths are destined to be unavoidable. Those who deserve to die, no matter how hard they work, no matter how many paths they have taken, only death is left in the end. And those who can reach the level of immortality are the same. No matter how difficult it is, no matter what path they take, the end is still the word immortality. Chu Yang's argument was unique, and it made everyone fall into contemplation. All the way until they walked out of the valley, no one spoke. They were all quietly thinking and deliberating. Everyone was carefully digesting the meaning of these two sentences. After a long time, everyone actually sighed at the same time. Then, everyone burst into laughter again. Because everyone saw the light in front of them. Everyone had already walked out of the valley. What appeared in front of them was the terrifying forest. Only when they stepped back into this place did Mo Tianji's intelligence network regain its function. His Heavenly Secrets plate and Heavenly Secrets hand could also be used again. Almost at the instant when Mo Tianji took out the Heavenly Secrets plate, he immediately frowned. One after another, streaks of light flashed on the Heavenly Secrets plate. Every streak of light here represented a piece of information. In just an instant, there were already thousands of streaks of light flashing. Furthermore, the Heavenly Secrets plate was still receiving information continuously and was still flashing. Mo Tianji sighed softly, I'm afraid we have really missed out on many things. My Heavenly Secrets plate only recorded 50 pieces of information a day ago. If it was just an ordinary matter, they wouldn't have specially informed me. But now, looking at the densely packed and flashing Heavenly Secrets plate, everyone was speechless and even more worried. During this period of time, something big must have happened. Otherwise, the Heavenly Army Intelligence Network wouldn't have contacted Mo Tianji so frequently. The extraterrestrial demons have sent reinforcements to purple cloud heavens and are eyeing covetously. Both sides are on the verge of war. It is said that the main reason for the extraterrestrial demons' actions this time is because of a large-scale spatial collapse in their homeland. They have no choice but to increase the intensity of their attacks on the Heavenly Imperial Court. They want to occupy the Heavenly Imperial Court's territory and gain more living space. Mo Tianji's first piece of information was extremely shocking. Everyone didn't say anything and quietly waited for Mo Tianji to continue. The saint has issued an order to the entire Heavenly Imperial Court to eliminate the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. All the official forces, private forces, and sects in the Heavenly Imperial Court must cooperate fully to eliminate the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. If they don't comply, kill them without mercy. The reason is because the Heavenly Armament Pavilion is the vanguard of the extraterrestrial demons against the Heavenly Imperial Court. Mo Tianji smiled bitterly. This was the second piece of information and it made everyone frown tightly. They cursed softly. We are the vanguard of the extraterrestrial demons? Motherfucker, this saint doesn't have a chin when he opens his mouth. Chapter 2562. The great Emperor Xie Yun of the Green Firmament Heavenly Emperor immediately tried to negotiate with the Heavenly Armament Pavilion because of the Great Sage's order to ban the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. After that, the negotiations were to no avail. Ao Xie Yun angrily announced that the Green Firmament Heavenly Emperor would immediately leave the Heavenly Imperial Court's territory and form its own sect. Furthermore, they are using iron-blooded methods to purge the clear sky heavens. Currently, the evil Cloud Great Emperor and the Heavenly Imperial Palace are in a standoff. The situation is critical and could erupt at any moment. This was the third piece of important news, which was directly related to one of the tribulations. Everyone's mood naturally became heavier and heavier. For Ao Xiyun to do such a thing, it was obvious that the situation was so severe that Ao Xiyun could not tolerate it. He could only go to extremes. Mo Yuntian and Ji Tian chose to remain neutral. It is said that they are waiting for the return of their Heavenly Emperor. However, the battle between the two worlds is already in full swing. Mo Tianji sighed. Everyone nodded. That made sense. Mo Yuntian and Extreme Heaven were originally the world of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Although they were no longer bandits and had the title of Heavenly Emperor, they were still the Heavenly Armament Pavilion in the past. How could he not be angry about this targeted news? And those who chose to oppose him should be the original people of the two great heavens and earth, as well as the people from the Lord's side. In addition, there were probably some forces who were trying to fish in troubled waters. Dong Wushang and Xie Dan Qiong, the two great celestial emperors, were not overseeing this heaven. Without a leader, not only were they unable to do anything big, they also had to guard against the underlings of the Holy Monarch, causing chaos in the two heavens. In the big Western Sky battle, the Holy Emperor's palace's side acted at a crucial moment, causing Gu Duxing's side to suffer a great defeat, with corpses strewn everywhere. Gu Duxing and Bu Luqing were seriously injured, and their whereabouts are unknown. This news made the faces of Chu Yang and the others change drastically. He was burning with anxiety. Donghuang Shui Leihan has announced to the world that she does not support Sage Monarch's decision to ban the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Furthermore, he clearly said that the Saint Monarch was trying to eliminate the dissidents and shake the foundation of the Heaven Imperial Court. The war of words between both sides is already in full swing. Currently, the Eastern Royal Heaven is preparing for war. When the Demon Empress was on her way back to the Demon Emperor Heaven path, she was ambushed by a large number of unknown individuals. Heavily injured, he returned to the Demon Emperor Sky. It is said that it was done by extraterrestrial demons. The Saint Emperor Palace is encircling and annihilating the Heavenly Armament Pavilion of the Demon Emperor Heaven, and the forces of the Demon Emperor Heaven are protecting them with all their might. Blood has already flowed like a river. Then, Mo Tianji's face was heavy. He turned his head to look at GMO, Luo Kadi, and Rui Butong, GMO's Heavenly Armament Pavilion. It had already been completely destroyed, and some of its remaining forces had wandered about the world. Luokadi. The forces that you and Butong established have also been scattered. Currently, there are many casualties. Those who are lucky enough to survive have basically disappeared without a trace. Xinyang, the Tian-K wolves under your command, have also been beaten to a pulp. Tan Tan's heavenly armament pavilion was directly annihilated. Tan Tan was enraged. He single-handedly fought against the great experts of Qi Heavenly Emperor Yenyang, Longinghuan, and severely injured 4 of them. Tan Tan was seriously injured, and his whereabouts were unknown. The only good news at the moment. Even Mo Huichen and exalted Celestial Emperor Zi Wuji had declared their support for the Eastern Monarch's decision. Moreover, it is said that under the sage's rage, these 2 great heavens and earth have already turned into battlefields. Mo Tianji's face was filled with worry. The Heaven Imperial Court has now become a huge battlefield. It's rare to have a stable place where there is no battle. Many great experts who have been in seclusion for many years have come out of seclusion. All the secret forces of the Celestial Emperors have also reappeared in the world. All the secret organizations have appeared one after another. All kinds of assassin organizations that have never walked under the sun have come out of nowhere. Everyone has participated in this great calamity. All the great sects have come out in full force, each choosing to support their own heavens and earth. The world is also a mess. This is all that has happened in this 1 month in this valley. The entire Heaven Imperial Court can be considered to have started a major reshuffle. This world is completely in chaos. This series of explosive news was simply a series of thunderbolts. It smashed the 10 people who had just come out of the valley until they were dizzy. For a moment, they were at a loss of what to do. Speaking of which, if it was really a series of thunderbolts, they wouldn't be surprised. Even those ladies weren't afraid of thunder. However, this series of news really shocked them. They were even a little dumbfounded. GMO, Luo Kadi, Rui Butong, Tantan. The heavenly armament pavilion that these people had painstakingly built after many years of hard work had been beaten to a pulp? If it was purely the collapse of the heavenly armament pavilion, that would be fine. With people coming and going, there would be people coming and going. If it was gone, it could be rebuilt and gathered again. However, the news of the brothers was also extremely bad. Tan Tan was seriously injured and his whereabouts were unknown. Gu Duxing and Bu Luqing were defeated and their whereabouts were unknown. Xie Danfeng, Hu Yanalbua, Gu Miaoling, and the other brothers? The subordinates of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion? How many of them were already gone? Over at the Demon Emperor Heaven, an open battle had already begun. Suddenly, in all directions, there were too many things that they couldn't let go of happening. For a moment, everyone's hearts were in a mess and they couldn't calm down. Chu Yang and Mo Tianji's faces were also as heavy as water. They were speechless for a long time. The other brothers' eyes were as if they were about to spit fire and their noses were panting. "Big brother, what do you think we should do now?" Dong Wushang was the first to jump up. He was a little impatient. "Should we go out immediately and kill those sons of B***cheese? Kill them? Sure." Mo Tianji slowly raised his head. "But I would like to ask, how do you plan to kill those people?" Mo Tianji and Chu Yang's expressions were as calm and serene. The worse the situation was, the calmer the reaction of the two of them became. It was like an ancient well without any ripples. Because both of them knew and understood that if the two of them were to become anxious at this time, then it would really be over for them. "Everyone, go back to your original areas of influence and reorganize your forces. We will fight to the death with them. With our foundation, we will definitely be able to fight. Let's do it," Dong Wushang said fiercely with a murderous aura. "If this is your overall strategy, I can only give you one word: stupid." Mo Tianji shouted. "Now, shut up immediately." Dong Wushang's lips moved as if he still wanted to argue. Mo Tianji and Chu Yang's gazes followed him like shadows. Xie Danqiong hurriedly pulled Dong Wushang's sleeves to stop him from speaking. Dong Wushang immediately fell silent like a deflated balloon, panting heavily. Mo Tianji paced slowly. Chu Yang frowned and his eyes almost froze. Firstly, the extraterrestrial demons just had to send reinforcements to Purple Cloud Heavens at this very moment. Chu Yang said dispassionately, "Let's not talk about whether the space over at the extraterrestrial demons' lair has really collapsed. Just the timing alone is a little off. If this is the case, we can get a preliminary hypothesis. There is a high chance that the saint and the extraterrestrial demons have some kind of connection." Mo Tianji nodded. Yes, the timing of this invasion is too coincidental. Even if there is no connection between them, it will become a connection. Furthermore, it seems to be to create a reason. At the very least, we can all be sure that the demon empress being heavily injured was definitely not the work of some otherworldly demons. If the otherworldly demons were really able to hide so many experts one day, I believe that directly occupying that day would definitely not be a difficult matter. Chu Yang nodded. But it won't be the saint who did it personally. I believe the saint won't be so unwise to do it personally at this time. The two of them looked at each other and said at the same time, since the saint can still severely injure the demon empress without personally doing it, it means that the saint still has a lot of hidden experts. Ordinary experts can't injure the demon empress, who is at the pinnacle. In other words, in a specific environment, pinnacle experts. Yes, is it possible that the demon empress was already injured before this? Chu Yang frowned. When we left the extreme heaven, only the demon empress was restraining the saint. With the demon empress temper, it's not strange for her to fight with the saint. With the saint's temperament, he wouldn't let go of such a good opportunity to severely injure or even kill the demon empress. As long as the demon empress battle strength is not at full strength, and there are a few experts besieging her, and if there is a relatively special geographical environment, this guess is also very possible. However, even if the demon empress was injured to a certain extent before, it's still not something that an ordinary pinnacle expert can injure again. Mo Tianji said with certainty, "I'm more inclined to believe that the saint has other unknown forces, and this force is still abnormally strong. What can a million-years-old myriad saint's true spirit cultivate? It's really something that we can't predict." Mo Tianji frowned and said, "At least this part of the strength has to be separated from the known complete region of the Saint Emperor Palace. Moreover, we can't underestimate it at all." Everyone nodded slowly. Other than that, there's also the turmoil in the few heavens. The Eastern Royal Heaven has the Eastern Royal Emperor personally overseeing it, so there shouldn't be a big problem. The Demon Emperor Heaven has already started fighting. Gu Du Xing and Bu Lu Qing also need reinforcements. GMO, Bu Tong, Tan Tan Little Wolf, and the other heavens are also in chaos and need reinforcements. Ao Xie Yun's side is also on the verge of erupting. In short, we need manpower in all aspects. We can't delay any longer, and it's extremely urgent. But the current situation definitely doesn't allow us to divide our forces. Once we divide our forces, I'm afraid we'll be playing right into the saint's hands. He'll easily find an opportunity to defeat us one by one. Then what do you think we should do? Dong Wushang and GMO roared at the same time. Are we just going to watch our brothers suffer and do nothing? Chapter 2563. Shut up. Chu Yang roared and interrupted their questioning. If you two only know how to say such words, then don't say them anymore. What we need now is to calm down. Any negligence will only lead to more serious consequences. It won't be of any help. Do you understand? If these words had been said by Mo Tianji, Dong Wushang and GMO would probably have argued a little more. But these words had come from Chu Yang's mouth, so the two of them immediately shut up. No one could question Big Boss Chu Yang's authority, and no one was allowed to blaspheme. On Mo Tianji's forehead, blue veins were throbbing. He said, "It's useless to be anxious now. The most important task now is to find a quiet and safe place to stay. Dong Wushang, GMO, Luo Kudi are in charge of patrol and protection. Me, Boss, Qin Wu, the two sisters-in-law, Dan Qiong, Butong, Xin Yang, and I need to have a meeting to sort out the chaotic situation." He took a deep breath. This is a critical moment. We can't make any mistakes. No one is allowed to act rashly. In this period of time, Tianji's words are equivalent to my words. Going against Tianji is equivalent to going against my words. Chu Yang added. Chu Yang was really afraid that the brothers here would rush to help in a moment of anger. That would be really bad. There was no doubt that Dong Wuxiang, GMO, Luo Kadi and Rui Butong were all capable of doing such a thing. So, it was better to take precautions early. Why didn't you call us for a meeting? Luo Kadi had just shouted when Chu Yang glared at him fiercely. Why didn't I call you? It's because of your bad habit of always yelling. Mo Tianji said fiercely. From now on, if any of you dare to say another word, you'll be demoted to the youngest immediately. Boss said it just now. I'm a man of my word now. The three of them immediately kept quiet out of fear. They really didn't dare to say another word. Chu Yang's heart sank. It could be seen from Mo Tianji's reaction that the situation had worsened to such an extent. Mo Tianji was actually so furious. He even wanted to gather everyone's strength to sort out the entire situation. He even wanted to stop Dong Wuxiang and the others. He even wanted to borrow Chu Yang's words. Judging from the current situation, the fog that Chu Yang felt in his mind was probably also in Mo Tianji's mind. Furthermore, Mo Tianji was in a complete mess because so many of his brothers had met with mishap at the same time. At this stage, there were no important targets to pay attention to. Because accidents were happening everywhere, every place should be a target worth paying attention to. He simply couldn't manage it. A short while later, a cave made of stone was formed, and the three guards went out to guard it. They formed the first line of defense. After that, Dong Wuxiang, Luo Kadi, and GMO were driven out to form the second line of defense. The other 10 people sat in a circle with heavy expressions on their faces. The participants were Chu Yang, Mo Qinggu, and Mo Tianji, Tai Budian and Wu Qianqian, Mo Lei, Chu Lu, Xin Yang, Rui Badong, Xiedanqiong. Mo Tianji took the initiative to add to the discussion. Then, everyone suggested that Tai Budian take charge of the overall situation. Chu Yang and Tai Butian were full of praise for this decision. This was because Mo Tianji had clearly realized that even though he was trying his best to act as if nothing had happened, his heart had already become somewhat chaotic. He had almost lost his mind, and it was difficult for him to maintain a calm heart that was able to see through everything. This matter ultimately concerned the safety of many of his brothers. If he focused on one, he would lose sight of the others. Yet, he couldn't bear to give up on anyone. To put it bluntly, Mo Tianji now might not be as good as Dong Wuxiang and the others. They rushed to provide support in a moment of hot-headedness and had only one goal. Thus, they had fewer concerns, and it was easier for them to position themselves. Mo Tianji needed to be in charge of the overall situation and consider everything thoroughly. But in the current situation, how could he take care of everything? Thus, Mo Tianji was even more confused now. At this time, Tai Budian, the emperor who once controlled the world, used the heart of a ruler to analyze and make a choice. This was the most appropriate choice. Now, all of you are too anxious, so you have lost your composure. Tianji clearly knows that he can't be anxious at this time, and he can use this to criticize others. But it's ineffective when it comes to himself. Tai Budian said calmly, "Indeed, major changes are happening in these heavens and earth. Every side is in an atmosphere of struggle, and the situation is precarious. Every side is our brothers. We have our brothers, and we can't abandon them. But now, we have to be clear about where we are needed the most. Also, what is the Saint Lord's purpose in deliberately creating such a chaotic situation? The Saint Lord won't blindly take revenge." Even though Tai Butian's words weren't cold, they were like a basin of cold water that was poured over everyone's heads. Now, let's first eliminate those unnecessary places. Tai Budian drew a big circle on the empty space in front of her with the scabbard, and then marked the names of the heavens and earth in the circle. Then, the scabbard first pointed at the 3 words purple clouds heavens and said calmly, "Even though the extraterrestrial demons will be our greatest enemy in the future, the purple clouds heavens now has the previous tribulation holding the fort, and there's also that mysterious white fog as the final barrier. As long as this final line of defense is still there, I believe that there shouldn't be any major unbearable changes in the short term. Therefore, the purple cloud's heavens can be eliminated. It's not within the scope of our attention this time. With a stroke of the scabbard, the purple cloud's heavens was instantly gone. The Eastern Royal Heavens has the Eastern Royal Emperor personally holding the fort. It's the most powerful and has long been prepared. Therefore, the Eastern Royal Heavens also doesn't need any reinforcements and can also be eliminated. In fact, if even the Eastern Royal Heavens has fallen, there's no point for us to rush over. The choice in this area is very obvious. The Eastern Royal Heavens was also removed. There's also the Ink Sky, Xie Danqiong side, and the Extreme Heaven, Dong Wushang side. Because the Heavenly Emperor of their respective heavens isn't around, there's no leader, and there's also someone who wants to sow discord, so they've been quarreling all this time. The situation is very chaotic, and, since they're quarreling and in chaos, I believe that as long as there's no major inducement, they definitely won't fight. Or rather, it can be said that there's nothing to worry about for the time being. Therefore, these two heavens can also be eliminated. We can even transfer some of the trusted experts from these two heavens and send them to other places as reinforcements. Even if there's chaos in these two heavens and earth, as long as Dong Wushang and Xie Danqiong return personally one day, they'll be able to settle it instantly. Tai Budian removed the Extreme Heaven and Ink Sky. At this point, the circle on the ground had become much simpler. Everyone's mood also gradually calmed down. Tai Budian frowned and pointed at the Buddha sky and Daluotian sky with her scabbard. After pondering for a moment, she said, "Now that the Buddha Sky Emperor Mo Huichen and the Daluotian Sky Emperor Zi Wuji have already made it clear that they're willing to stand on the side of the Eastern Royal Heavens, there's no big problem in these two heavens and earth. As long as the local forces don't interfere, Ji Mo's Heavenly Armament Pavilion, Luo Kadi's Heavenly Armament Pavilion, and Xinyang's pack of wolves won't really be wiped out. At the very least, there's a great chance of turning things around. Therefore, because there's no possibility of absolute annihilation in these two heavens and earth, we can temporarily eliminate them. As for the experts of Holy Emperor Palace, they're the minority after all. Although there'll definitely be sacrifices, we can't care about them now. I'm not being heartless when I say this, and I believe you can understand. Moreover, even if there's a sacrifice, it'll be too late before you return." As she spoke, Tai Budian removed the two heavens and earth. Everyone nodded. GMO, Luo Kadi, and Xinyang all nodded in agreement. What Tai Budian said was indeed reasonable. Although such an analysis was already calm to the point of being almost callous, it was exactly what was needed now. Green Sky Heavens, now the entire territory has already fallen into Ao Shiyun's hands. Although there's still a confrontation, although it's on the verge of breaking out, this just shows that Ao Shiyun has already stabilized the situation. Therefore, there's no need to worry about this heavens and earth for the time being. As she spoke, Tai Budian removed this heavens and earth as well. As for Demon Emperor Heaven, now it's fallen into an extremely chaotic battlefield. The situation seems to be extremely dangerous, but in fact, it's not really that bad. First of all, almost everyone there is on our side, and there's also Yao Ningtai's full support. It can be said that it's the foundation of our base camp. Under the leadership of such an advantageous force, I believe that in the short term, there won't be any major incidents. Especially at this stage, the Demon Empress has already returned to Demon Emperor Heaven. Even if she's seriously injured, there's still nothing to worry about with her holding the fort. Tai Budian said indifferently, "Moreover, it's precisely because of the Demon Empress injury that Demon Emperor Heaven will instead be more united against a common enemy. Therefore, the Demon Emperor Heaven can also be removed. In the end, only the Big Western Heavens, the South Pole Heavens, and the Chi Bay Heavens were left. Most of the territories had already been removed by Tai Budian one after another." Mo Tianji let out a deep breath at this moment. Tai Budian was pondering, and her beautiful brows were slightly knitted. Finally, she pointed the hilt of her sword at Chi Bei Tian, the Heavenly Armament Pavilion founded by Tan Tan didn't have many people to begin with. It can be said that it's the weakest side of all the Heavenly Armament Pavilions. This isn't necessarily the main reason why Tan Tan's side lost. However, this weakness may not necessarily be a bad thing. With weak strength, there are fewer people. After losing, there are relatively fewer scruples. Since Tan Tan still had the strength to escape after fighting the 4 great experts alone, then he must have taken Dan Feng with him. Otherwise, with Tan Tan's character, he would have rather fought to the death than give up on Xie Dan Feng. In this way, although Tan Tan is seriously injured, there's still no danger to his life when he's with Dan Feng. At most, he'll completely abandon the Heavenly Armament Pavilion over there. Therefore, this Qi Bei Tian can also be ignored for the time being. Chapter 2564. The South Pole is where Rui Butong's Heavenly Armament Pavilion is located. The power that Rui Butong developed is greatly different from the other Heavenly Armament Pavilions. He devoted himself to cultivating a group of thieves. Although in a general sense, their strength is relatively weak, but in terms of escaping, these people actually have a considerable advantage. Moreover, each person has their own specialty, and their ability to survive is even stronger. From Rui Butong, it's not hard to deduce the personalities of the people following him. Most of them should be well hidden. Tai Butian faintly smiled. Therefore, the South Pole can also be temporarily excluded. After eliminating one by one, there was finally only one target left. The big western sky. Gu Duxing sighed. Everyone's hearts unexpectedly became a lot clearer at this time, as if they had a lot more assurance out of thin air. So much so that when Tai Butian said, "From Rui Butong, it's not hard to deduce the personalities of the people following him. Most of them should be well hidden," they actually couldn't help but laugh. Rui Butong muttered something, but no one knew what he was saying. Right now, only the big western sky side. That is, the place where Gu Duxing, Gu Miaoling, and Bu Luqing are located, is the most dangerous place. At the same time, it's also the place that most urgently needs help. Tai Butian raised her head, thought for a bit, and said, "Just now, the intelligence also said, in the big western skies battle, at the moment when the battle was intense, the Holy Emperor Palace's powers suddenly made a move. In the intelligence of the other worlds, there is no similar intelligence." From this sentence, we can see that the main target of the Holy Emperor's attack. It's the big western skies Gu Duxing. Moreover, this information is very likely deliberately released by the Holy Emperor. Tai Butian's brows furrowed. Therefore, the big western sky is the place where we have no choice but to save. It's also the most dangerous trap laid down by the Holy Emperor. I even suspect that the Holy Emperor himself is over there in the big western sky, waiting for us to walk right into the trap. Tai Butian faintly said, "We just destroyed his myriad holy true spirit base, and destroyed one of his doppelgangers. It's impossible for the Holy Emperor not to retaliate, and his retaliation, I judge, is most likely here." Tai Butian finished speaking. Tai Butian quietly thought for a while. After confirming that her thoughts and speculations didn't miss anything, she finally smiled faintly. "As for the rest, do you have anything else to add?" There was absolute silence. After a long time, Mo Tianji replayed what Tai Butian had just said in his mind over and over again. Then he looked at the map on the ground again and drew it again. He couldn't help but sigh and say, "Boss, heaven-mending sister-in-law is truly amazing. She is as meticulous as dust, worthy of being an emperor of a generation, a character who ruled over the world." Chu Yang pretended to be humble. "You flatter me, you flatter me." He spoke humbly. However, he did not hide his proud expression at all. Mo Tianji shook his head. "What's your name? I'm not praising you. What are you so proud of? Don't say I didn't warn you. Don't let Bu Tianxia down in the future. With Bu Tianxia's intelligence, let alone you, even if she wanted to scheme against me, I could only wait for bad luck. In the past, I really underestimated everyone in the world." Diwuqing wrote too. Tai Butian blushed and didn't say anything. Chu Yang forced a smile and said with an awkward face, "How would I dare to let Butian down? Don't talk about doing it, I don't even dare to think about it. Bah, I have never thought about it. Your Butian saw is so wise, how would I? Actually, what Butian thought of, you can also think of it. If I put my mind to it, I might not have thought of it either. However, our minds are a little muddled." Chu Yang's words paused again and again. The entire place was in an uproar and full of laughter. Fortunately, Dong Wushang, Luo Kudi, and GMO had gone outside. Otherwise, who knew what kind of laughter there would be? However, there was still Rui Butong. His laughter never stopped. It was unknown whether he was laughing at Emo Tianji or Boss Chu. Emo Ching Wu suddenly thought of something and said, "Second brother, you call sister Tian Tian Saw. Shouldn't you also call me Saw?" Emo Nunji roared angrily, "Get lost. Little girl. You are really going against the heavens." Everyone laughed even harder when they saw this. This plan is completely feasible. Even if I personally planned it, it wouldn't be much better than this. Mo Tianji took a deep breath. Although we clearly know that the big western sky is a trap, right now, we still have no choice but to jump. We have no choice. Everyone slowly nodded, expressing their approval. A spider's web may be able to catch mosquitoes, but can it catch a tiger? Chu Yang's eyes once again shone with a sharp divine light. Everyone roared in agreement. That's right. Since that's the case, let's immediately set out and go to the big western sky first. Mo Tianji waved his hand. But even though the road ahead was already set, when everyone walked out, they were still worried. They were still concerned about their brothers in other worlds. However, they had already steeled their convictions. The road had to be walked step by step. A meal had to be eaten one bite at a time. Being impatient and panicked was useless. To save a crisis, they had to slowly save an emergency. Right now, they could only do this. First, they had to start from the most dangerous place. It's just that we have to go to the extreme heavens first. Mo Tianji's sudden words made everyone stare blankly. Right now, the top priority was to go to the big western sky. Wasn't this already decided? Why did they have to go to the extreme heavens? Could it be that Mo Tianji had overturned the already decided plan in such a short time? What kind of explanation was this? Only Tai Butian, Wu Qianqian, and Chu Yang's gazes shone. They already had an understanding in their hearts. His mind had recovered its calm, and Mo Tianji's mind had once again calmed down. Right now, going to the extreme heavens was indeed the best choice. Right now, we can't directly go to the big western sky. If we rashly go, there's a big chance that we'll beat the grass and scare the snake. Mo Tianji said heavily, although the Saint Monarch side has already set up an inescapable net in the big western sky, waiting for us to jump in, although we ultimately have to go, and also have the confidence to break through the inescapable net. However, there's always been a big risk. Seizing a bit of an opportunity will be enough to overturn the final outcome of both sides. Especially, the Saint Monarch himself is in the big western sky. This is undoubtedly the most difficult place for us. Therefore, this is an unexpected opportunity. We'll certainly create it. However, if we want to create this kind of opportunity, there's a crucial point. This opportunity must have enough of a sound, and it must have enough of a deterrent effect on the Saint Monarch side. Therefore, I've decided that we'll first go to the extreme heavens, and our goal will be the Saint Emperor's palace. Mo Tianji's eyes had an unprecedented ruthlessness. Destroy the Saint Emperor's palace. We'll use a thorough method of revenge to thoroughly destroy it. This will make people realize that we're carrying out a deliberate act of revenge. Originally, the Saint Emperor's palace is a very difficult place to chew on, so much so that it's basically impossible to chew on a hard bone. Not only is there a Saint Monarch stationed here, there are also countless hidden experts. If this place was in normal times, even if we gathered all of our battle strength, we still might not be able to capture it. But right now, the timing is just right. First, the Saint Monarch certainly isn't overseeing this place. Second, of the experts that previously besieged and heavily injured the Demon Empress, even if there were a portion of the Saint Monarch's hidden strength, there would certainly be a considerable portion of the Saint Emperor's hidden experts. Third, the Saint Monarch's subordinate forces wantonly annihilated the heavenly armament pavilions everywhere. They also certainly include many experts from the Saint Emperor's palace. In summary, the Saint Emperor's palace is certainly at its weakest right now. It's the most vulnerable time. And as long as we do it as much as possible, and destroy it as much as possible, the big Western Skies side will certainly have some changes in form. Even if their main forces can't make it back in time, there will certainly be a considerable degree of slack in their mentality. The most crucial point is that there are many proofs that our main forces are still in the extreme heavens. This can give them a misconception. As long as there is this misconception, the people in the big Western Sky will have a certain degree of slack in the big Western Sky's situation. What we need is this bit of slack, and this bit of slack can be transformed into an opportunity for us to seize the victory in the big Western Sky. Moreover, it can reduce the pressure on Gu Duxing. During the march, I'll seize the opportunity to gather information and determine Gu Duxing's whereabouts. And if there's a need, there's no harm in boss imitating Gu Duxing's sword intent and using this to massacre the Saint Emperor's palace. In the name of the solitary emperor, Mo Tianji said. Brilliant plan, Chu Yang exclaimed in admiration. However, Dong Wuxiang and Xie Dan Qiong can't show themselves in this battle. Mo Tianji said, we can't give them any reason to start a war in Mo Yun and Saint Emperor's heavens. Therefore, the two of you can rush to the big Western Sky first, but your whereabouts must be concealed. Dong Wuxiang and Xie Dan Qiong's spirits were shaken. That's right, Lair should also go together. Ensure that your whereabouts are absolutely concealed. I believe that this point is the Black Devil's specialty. Mo Tianji's voice suddenly became serious. Xie Dan Qiong, you and Mo Lair, the two of you must keep an eye on Dong Wuxiang. You mustn't act blindly without thinking and affect the overall situation. The two of them solemnly agreed. This time, the two of you are secretly going to have an important mission, and that is to do your best to find Gu Duxing and rescue him. Ensure his safety. Chu Yang repeatedly exhorted, Lair, Dan Qiong, I'll leave this matter to the two of you. Dong Wuxiang listened from the side and already couldn't wait to turn around and leave. Mo Lair and Xie Dan Qiong solemnly said, as long as second brother Gu isn't dead right now, even if we have to risk our lives, we must ensure his and second sister-in-law's safety. Please you to go. Chu Yang took a deep breath. But we'll meet again in the big Western Sky. A figure rose into the air. Dong Wuxiang, Xie Dan Qiong, Mo Lair, and Mo Yuntian, the three great bodyguards. Immediately, when they were 30 feet above the ground, they turned into a rainbow and flew across the sky. It was clear that these people were truly impatient. Cough cough, I really did my best. How many threads do I have to straighten out for an 8 million word book? This kind of outburst is already the limit. Give me a few monthly votes to comfort me. There's also a happy matter. Our family's world-defying stage game is going to be officially open beta tomorrow. I hope that the game adaptation of this novel can satisfy everyone. Right now, a lot of book fans are playing inside, and the reviews are not bad. I also took some time to go in and play for a while. Yes, the one called Handsome Feng Ling in the game is me. This name suits my personal image very well. Everyone, please don't bully me when you see this, haha. Speaking of which, I'm actually very strong. Be careful that you don't get bullied by me. Official website address, S37/. Tomorrow at 10 a.m., World-Defying Stage will be officially open beta. Similarly, we'll see you in the game. Chapter 2565. The three great guards might be a bit better, but Dong Wuxiang and the other two going to the big Western Sky, I'm afraid, it's the same as releasing 3 death gods from hell. Or the name, Black Devil, will really resound through the sky of the heavenly imperial court. Mo Tianji watched the 3 people's rainbows flash by and disappear. He smiled bitterly and said, no matter what Gu Duxing's current situation is, before we go, the big western sky will certainly be turned upside down by them. There is no need to doubt this. Of course. Chu Yang said matter-of-factly, they dared to treat our brothers like this. Why can't we kill them until they turn the sky upside down? Not only will they kill, but I will also kill. Chu Yang took the lead and went. Saint Emperor's Palace, this place, if I go today, it's already destined that I won't be able to survive. Mo Tianji and the others followed soon after. They could completely understand the fury in Chu Yang's heart. The whereabouts of so many brothers were unknown, their life and death unknown. After so many years since they became sworn brothers, this was the first time this had happened. Facing powerful enemies that were almost impossible to contend against, such a grim situation, Chu Yang was thoroughly enraged. There had never been a moment when Chu Yang's killing intent was so strong. Mo Tianji no longer said anything and followed behind Chu Yang. The group of 10 people turned into a sharp arrow, piercing straight into the extreme sky, Wuxia City. 1,800 miles north of the extreme sky capital, Wuxia City, surrounded by mountains on 3 sides, was the location of the Saint Emperor's Palace. In the north, there was an unusually wide mountain, as if it wanted to reach the clouds. It was like a huge backrest. And the 2 mountains on the left and right were like 2 armrests. There were no traces of anyone decorating here. The whole terrain, where the 3 mountains overlapped, was like a huge armchair made by heaven. And outside the 2 mountains on the left and right, there was a surging river on each side, like 2 dragons coming out of the water, flowing into the distance. And the Saint Emperor's Palace was located in the seat of this armchair. Chu Yang and the others had just passed through Wuxia City, and when the sky had just turned dark, they saw this majestic armchair in the distance. They also saw the magnificent Saint Emperor's Palace inside the armchair. The terrain here. Ng instinctively frowned. Why would the Saint Emperor choose such a terrain to build the Saint Emperor's Palace? It's simply predestined to be defeated and destroyed. Is there a problem with the topography and geomancy here? Chu Yang asked. Chu Yang didn't even know a thing or two about feng shui. So, he naturally didn't have the right to speak. However, great trickster Mo was an expert in this field. Something that could make him so surprised must have a huge flaw. No problem at all. Mo Tianji said, it's because there's nothing wrong with it. This was the biggest problem. As I said just now, this place is definitely a treasured land of feng shui. In the entire Heaven Imperial Court, there is absolutely no other place with better terrain than this place. Since it's already the best feng shui location, what's the problem? Chu Yang was puzzled. This is not the best feng shui location. Didn't you notice that I said, absolutely, feng shui location? I didn't use adjectives like best or best. In most places with feng shui, it was necessary to find a place with the best feng shui layout. But in reality, there was no such thing as a perfect place in the world. Heaven and earth were originally incomplete. Even heaven and earth were incomplete. How could there be a so-called perfect place in the world? Mo Tianji replied. Well, what you mean is that this is an absolutely feng shui location, but it's actually not a good place. Chu Yang asked again. You can't say that. This topography naturally formed a mountain handrail and a pair of dragons out of the water. Everything was created by the heavens. It can be said to be perfect. Mo Tianji said, no one can destroy this kind of natural paradise. That's why it's an absolutely feng shui location. Even a saint can't? Chu Yang asked. No, unless someone can destroy the entire Heaven Imperial Court, the layout of this area won't be damaged. A saint chose to build the Saint Emperor Palace here. It's indeed a good choice. But what if it's not a saint? Mo Tianji said, in fact, it's a good thing for anyone to do something here. What are you talking about? I don't understand. Chu Yang rarely admitted his ignorance. But what Mo Tianji said just now was indeed a little confusing. There were not many people who could understand it. Well, it should be like this. If a saint dies, it won't affect the feng shui. If he lives, it won't affect the feng shui. Ah? If a saint dies, it won't affect the feng shui? I say, old third Mo, Hurry up and say something sensible. If you continue to talk nonsense, I'll really get angry. Mo Tianji stared blankly for a while. Then he said, "It was my mistake to talk about feng shui with an outsider like you. Simply put, this kind of perfect feng shui treasure land is called Heaven's Throne. Humans can never be on par with the heavens. Humans won't benefit from the feng shui here. If that's the case, any excellent feng shui will lose its effect. It's meaningless. It won't protect a saint or anyone here. So, no matter how good the feng shui is, it's meaningless. Do you understand?" "Oh, so that's what you mean. Then, isn't this feng shui meaningless?" Chu Yang said. "How can it be meaningless? This kind of feng shui is actually used to protect the heavens. It won't simply protect a person. No one will." Mo Tianji said, "So, this excellent feng shui isn't good for humans." At this point, Chu Yang suddenly understood. Actually, the best feng shui sign here is outside of the twin dragons. That's the only place in this place that can be protected by the power of feng shui. It can help oneself, others, and future generations. Mo Tianji sighed, but the saint obviously didn't choose that place. I think he might not be unaware of the mystery, but it's because he can't afford to lose face. Being told that he has a short life is really a slap in the face. Chu Yang smiled sarcastically. So, even though the saint can see it, he can only choose this place. Mo Tianji also sighed. Even if he's as strong as a saint, he can't avoid this. This is the real reason why the saint didn't build his real headquarters here. Mo Tianji sighed softly. Chu Yang nodded and took out a water bag. "Everyone, drink some water. The battle is about to begin." "Aren't we going to wait a little longer? Night hasn't completely fallen yet. Aren't we going to choose the best time to attack?" Tai Budian asked. "No need." Chu Yang gave everyone a heavy pill. Then, with a wave of his hand, a black silk scarf appeared in his hand. He slowly covered his face and tied it tightly behind his head. The Calamity Sword also appeared in his hand. Under Chu Yang's control, the light of the Calamity Sword under normal circumstances slowly changed. The whole sword gradually turned black. It was the appearance of Gu Duxing's black dragon sword. Chu Yang straightened his back. His entire person suddenly became cold and sharp, like a person who was like a sword. He was dressed in black and held the black dragon sword in his hand. His body exuded a sense of loneliness and loneliness. He was a living example of Gu Duxing. He believed that if Gu Duxing's original body was here, he would also be surprised. Could it be that he was actually a twin, and there was another twin brother who had the same fate, experience, and strength as himself? Among the brothers, Chu Yang had spent the longest time with Gu Duxing. Not only did he not feel pressured to imitate Gu Duxing, but he could also imitate Gu Duxing at every difficulty. Chu Yang could even completely imitate his sword techniques, including the Chaotic Heavens sword technique. During the battle with Mo Yuntian, Gu Duxing had explained this sword technique to Chu Yang in detail. At that time, neither of them had thought that this sword intent would appear in the Holy Emperor Palace in such a way. Tianji set up the formation, or seal the door. Bu Tian and Qian Qian fill in the gaps. Chu Yang rose and turned into a sword light that shot out. Today, the Holy Emperor Palace will not be spared. A burst of murderous aura suddenly exploded and engulfed the entire Holy Emperor Palace. The entire crowd overflowed with a strong, clear, and vengeful intent. A black dragon shook its head and wagged its tail, madly dashing forward in an overbearing manner. Luo Kedi, GMO, Xinyang, Rui Budong, Mo Qingwu and the rest followed closely behind. 5 rainbows shot out in all directions behind Chu Yang. At this moment, they were only a few thousand feet away from the Holy Emperor Palace. In the night that had just descended, one could clearly see the extremely dazzling sword light in midair. Also, the undisguised murderous aura that soared to the heavens rushed towards them like raging waves. Almost at the same time, all the practitioners in the Holy Emperor's Palace felt their hair stand on end. Who dares to be so presumptuous here? Following a loud roar, the entire Holy Emperor Palace trembled. Then, another roar sounded, "Enemy attack!" The voice was sharp and rushed straight into the night sky, like a thunderbolt in the clear sky, exploding loudly. The vigilance of the Holy Emperor Palace was indeed extraordinary. Their reaction could be said to be extremely fast. The sword light had just been seen here, and they had already reacted immediately. The next moment, beams of light shot out from the Holy Emperor Palace. These were streaks of light. Each rainbow represented an expert who was at least at the peak of the high-level saint level. 20 to 30 experts at the peak rushed out at the same time, one after another. This kind of momentum, this kind of lineup, could really be said to be earth-shattering. Countless majestic auras brazenly rushed towards Chu Yang. However, Chu Yang completely ignored this and sneered, "Since you dared to destroy my heavenly armament pavilion, you will have to bear my revenge. Even if it's the most sacred place in the Heaven Imperial Court, Holy Emperor Palace, tonight, you will have to bear the fate of vanishing into thin air." The black dragon transformed and the sword light flashed, mixed with a sense of loneliness and desolation that pervaded the world. Chu Yang, together with his sword, rushed towards the gate of the Holy Emperor Palace from the front. White light flashed on the gate, and the restriction here was instantly activated. Chapter 2566. This white light was a restriction personally laid down by the saint. One could imagine how powerful it was. The pure and holy white light immediately enveloped the entire gate. In an instant, it had reached its strongest level. But on top of the city wall, someone still exclaimed, "Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Black Dragon? Misty Heaven Sword Technique? This is the Solitary Emperor." In this world, only the Solitary Emperor would have this kind of lonely and desolate aura when he fully unleashed his sword aura. This point was no longer a secret. Everyone watched as this sword light that was infinitely close to black rushed over at an astonishing speed like a falling meteor. It rushed towards the defensive white light that was personally laid down by the saint. Everyone's palms were sweating profusely. Although everyone had confidence in the defense that was personally laid down by the saint, they were all frightened by the Solitary Emperor's heaven-shaking might. Would the Solitary Emperor, who had come for revenge, be able to break through this strongest defense? The answer was revealed almost at the instant of contact. The sword light rushed into the white light like a red-hot sharp knife, unreservedly stabbing into a pool of solidified butter. That white light only flickered for a moment before it exploded with a loud bang. Facing the decisive attack of the Solitary Emperor, even the defense that was personally laid down by the saint couldn't withstand a single blow. The entire city gate was completely overturned by the sudden explosion of the white light. Countless people screamed miserably as they were turned into flying people. Blood flowed in the air as their bodies involuntarily flew far away. Under the sword of the Solitary Emperor, the defense of the saint couldn't even delay the slightest bit of time. What did this result mean? Everyone's eyebrows twitched. Then, they saw that after the grand sword light broke through the defense of the white light, it didn't slow down at all. It didn't even need to catch its breath as it rushed straight into the Saint Emperor's palace. Wherever the sword energy and the sword light passed, there was blood everywhere like a waterfall. In just a few thousand feet, there were already no less than 500 corpses lying on the ground. Long rainbows flickered. No less than 10 figures landed in front of Chu Yang in an instant. One of them said in a deep voice, "Solitary Emperor?" Chu Yang said coldly, "Even if you know me, I won't show you any mercy." Ha! Everyone on the other side burst into laughter. The legendary lone traveler Great Emperor is a man of few words. Seeing you in person today is better than seeing you in person. However, even if you are the lone traveler Great Emperor, you are courting death by coming here today. Whether you're courting death or not, we'll know after we fight. Chu Yang shouted. As he soared into the air, an indescribable aura of loneliness instantly spread through the air and engulfed the entire area. It was as if he was the only one left in this world. A sword across the sky to the peak. With a sweep of the sword light, it flew out in the shape of a fan. It actually faced dozens of tyrannical opponents head-on. Without exception, all of them enveloped him. Everyone on the Holy Emperor Palace's side felt a bleak and lonely killing intent at that moment. In the next moment, all of them reacted at the same time, and their reactions were very similar. They were furious. Gu Duxing, who do you think you are? You actually want to challenge all of us here by yourself? Who do you think you are, the Holy Emperor His Majesty? Kill him! Someone shouted. Everyone on the Holy Emperor Palace's side attacked at the same time. Everyone used their own techniques, and countless sharp techniques were all directed at Gu Duxing. The momentum was indescribable. At this moment, Jianghu, GMO, Luo Kadi and Sacrificial Maiden Ray Budong rushed in at the same time. They didn't speak and chose their opponents. They fought fiercely. Life and death, victory and defeat, vanish in a flash. Chu Yang recited softly. This was originally Gu Duxing's sword technique, but Chu Yang used it at this moment and it was equally smooth. In his previous life, he understood the taste of loneliness far better than Gu Duxing. He had this state of mind. He understood this state of mind. This sword technique was largely perfected by Chu Yang. He turned around. Countless sword chi seemed to be attacking in all directions without any pattern. However, two people on the opposite side screamed in pain without any warning. They were already injured by the sword chi. The skin that was cut by the sword energy couldn't stop bleeding at all. It could only continue to flow. No divine technique or secret technique could be used. What no one noticed was that their life force, soul strength, and pure cultivation strength had also been reduced by a small half after this sword strike. This wasn't the effect of the Sword of Solitude, but the Calamity Sword secretly swallowing. The effect of the Sword of Solitude in Chu Yang's hands, coupled with the Calamity Sword, was at least several times better than when Gu Duxing used it himself. Where can I find a soulmate in the world? Pointing his sword forward, he attacked 300 times in an instant. The sword went in and out of the chest of the Saint Expert at the front dozens of times. Chu Yang didn't hesitate. He kicked the corpse in front of him and stabbed the sword into the heart of another person. With a swing, the two parts of the corpse turned into hidden weapons and flew out. When you want to look back, you've already forgotten your feelings. Chu Yang jumped up and spun slowly in the air. Countless deadly sword energy fell in a fan shape. Within a radius of 3,000 feet around Chu Yang, all the people with lower cultivations let out a blood-curdling scream. Then there was no more sound. The remaining 30 or so experts were all forced back by his sword attack for close to 100 steps. In the process, 7 or 8 people died because they couldn't bear it anymore. What sword technique is this? How can it have such terrifying power? So far, Chu Yang had only used 3 moves. But a feeling of fear had arisen in everyone's heart, and they couldn't suppress it. According to the legends, although the solitary emperor was powerful and sharp, it didn't seem to be to this extent, right? This was simply terrifying, a nightmare. Could it be that he broke through after being suppressed by the Saint Emperor? But this was the Saint Emperor Palace, the sacred place of the Heaven Imperial Court. How could they let him behave so atrociously here? Everyone tried to suppress the fear in their hearts. With a roar, they surrounded Chu Yang to eliminate the nightmare. Chu Yang quietly landed on the ground. His eyes behind the black mask were cold and emotionless. No matter how many people he faced, he would never face more than 3 people head-on. As long as someone could get behind him or attack from above, Mo Qingwu and the rest would instantly join forces and force that person to retreat or join forces to kill him in the shortest time possible. They had to ensure Chu Yang's safety. Although Chu Yang didn't need such protection, the legendary solitary emperor might not. To make these people believe that this was indeed the solitary emperor, some necessary concealment was still necessary. For the next period of time, the battle fell into a stalemate. Although Chu Yang and the rest's attacks were fierce and sharp, the strength displayed by the other party was definitely not weak. After the initial irresistible force, they gradually fell into a stalemate. No one could do anything to the other. Of course, this stalemate was deliberately created by Chu Yang. On one hand, Chu Yang was secretly gathering his energy, preparing for a sure kill attack. On the other hand, he was waiting for news from Mo. This time, Chu Yang didn't intend to let any of the Saint Monarch's direct experts walk out alive. The Saint Monarch's crazy revenge had also triggered Chu Yang's violent nature. As long as Mo and Chu Lu'er completed the outer blockade, Chu Yang was prepared to use the Tribulation Sword technique with all his might and start a massacre. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a cold yet seductive voice resounded, "Stop!" On the opposite side, more than 10 experts, who had been suppressed by Chu Yang to the point that they couldn't breathe, leaped out of the battle circle at the same time. Chu Yang held his sword and looked towards the direction of the voice. He saw a woman in white standing gracefully on the steps. A pair of cold eyes were looking at him. However, for some reason, this pair of cold eyes gave off an indescribably beautiful feeling. It was as if the endless scenery of the vast starry sky and the boundless sea was revealed from this pair of cold eyes. This was a perfect face. No one would be able to find a single flaw on his face. She had an extremely exquisite face with an impeccable shape, perfect phoenix eyes, and slender eyebrows. Every single one of them was fresh and refined. Her skin was white and tender, her nose was tall and straight, and her lips were red and moist. This was a perfect woman without any flaws. Without any introduction, Chu Yang instantly knew who this woman was. In this world, only this woman could make people think of her name when they saw her face. In the past, she was the pearl of the Shui clan, the world's #1 beauty, the younger sister of Donghuang Shui Leihan, Shui Xian. This white-clothed woman who seemed to have appeared out of thin air just stood there, and there was not the slightest bit of disharmony in the entire bloody battlefield. This was because the moment this white-clothed woman appeared, the entire battlefield seemed to be filled with the fragrance of flowers and the chirping of birds. It was an endless feeling of contentment, and both sides of the battlefield actually quieted down. The passage of countless years and the baptism of time could not diminish her beauty in the slightest. On the contrary, because of the passage of time, it added a hint of maturity to her peerless beauty, and it added a boundless magnificence to her indescribably beautiful appearance. Cold and peerless, unattainable, immortal and otherworldly. Even Mo Qingwu and Mo couldn't help but feel envious when they looked at this woman. This was the limit that a woman could reach. Time never aged her face, her youth was eternal. The vicissitudes of life didn't hinder her, only her magnificence was always with her. This was undoubtedly the ultimate goal of every woman. Even Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei, who were at the peak of martial arts, couldn't avoid it. Chu Yang stood with his sword held horizontally, his eyes coldly staring at the woman in front of him. He knew the identity of this woman very well. When he had first seen her beauty, he had been in a trance for a moment. But he had sobered up in an instant. This was because Chu Yang knew that this woman before his eyes was deranged and devoid of conscience. Chapter 2567. This fairy-like woman in front of him was willing to sacrifice her own father, slaughter her own brothers, and use her entire clan as a tool for her own love and for her husband's ambition, Shui Xian. This extremely elegant and refined name shouldn't belong to this woman. Her actions would only tarnish this name. Chu Yang stared at this woman. There was no longer any desire for beauty in his heart, but he didn't know what exactly he was feeling. It could be hatred, disdain, or disdain. At this moment, Chu Yang had already made up his mind. This woman must be killed. Even if Shui Leihan was here, he wouldn't be able to stop him from waving his sword. As for whether he could kill her or not, that was secondary. Even if Shui Xian's real body was here, Chu Yang would still kill her. Moreover, Chu Yang already knew from Dong Wushang that the Shui Xian here was actually just a doppelganger, just like the doppelganger of the sage at the 10,000 Saints True Spirit base. As he thought of this, Chu Yang couldn't help but sigh at how miraculous this world was. Not long ago, he had just killed a clone of Master Yun, and now he was seeing his wife's clone here. Furthermore, she was about to be killed by him. This must be the renowned solitary emperor, Gu Duxing, right? Shui Xian carefully sized up Chu Yang from head to toe. From his figure to his sword, she could feel his aura. As she looked at him, her eyes were bright and kind. She naturally stood out from the crowd. Yes, Chu Yang said coldly, you must be the saint's first wife, the current Saint Empress, right? Shui Xian nodded slightly. She said, yes, I am. However, I didn't know that the solitary emperor had already revealed his identity. Why did you cover your face? Are you trying to deceive yourself? Intense hatred shot out from Chu Yang's eyes. He said coldly, all of this was bestowed upon me by the saint. A person's face is bestowed by their parents and bestowed by the heavens. If there wasn't any special reason, who would deliberately deceive others? Shui Xian shook her head and smiled bitterly. So the solitary emperor's face is actually injured? However, I don't know if it's serious or not. I have top-notch healing medicine here. It might be able to treat it. Chu Yang sneered, I don't dare to take your medicine. Is there anything that the solitary emperor doesn't dare to do? Even the heavenly watchtower holy grounds and the holy emperor palace were not in the solitary traveler great emperor's eyes. There's nothing in this world that the solitary emperor doesn't dare to do. A mere pill is the heart of my fists, yet the solitary emperor is willing to throw it away like a worn-out shoe. Shui Xian squinted her eyes. He chuckled. All around, many people from Holy Emperor Palace stared with their eyes wide open. I didn't expect you to see through my thoughts. Chu Yang replied. Once these words came out, the entire audience went silent. What is Gu Du Xing talking about? She could tell what was on his mind? It seemed that the divine empress had just said, this concubine's fists have the heart, yet the great emperor discards her like a worn-out shoe? Was Gu Du Xing referring to this sentence? Wasn't this too presumptuous? How dare he say that? He actually dared to tease the divine empress? Unexpectedly, Shui Xian was still able to maintain her composure. She smiled lightly and said, I wonder if the solitary traveler Grand Emperor has some misunderstandings towards me. Or perhaps he is taking his anger out on me because of my relationship with esteemed lord. Just now, I was too presumptuous. Our relationship is shallow, so I spoke too deeply. Indeed, it's my fault. Shui Xian was indeed worthy of being the divine empress of this generation. She was the only person who shared a pillow with esteemed Lord Cloud. Even after being ridiculed by Chu Yang on the spot, she was still able to maintain her composure. Not only was she able to maintain her composure, she could even raise her hand and repeat it. With just a few sentences, she had already accused the solitary traveler Grand Emperor of being narrow-minded, taking his anger out on others, and so on. I said that you saw through my thoughts. What I meant was, your holy emperor palace is really not in my eyes. In this world, there is nothing that I don't dare to do. Chu Yang sneered, Your Majesty Divine Empress, you think too highly of yourself. These words did not leave any face for Shui Xian. Everyone's expression changed. Shui Xian's expression changed slightly. She chuckled and said, But you still don't dare to eat my healing medicine. Why is that? Chu Yang's eyes were filled with mockery. He said coldly, I don't dare to because my surname is not Shui. That's all. Then he laughed mockingly and said, Even Shui Xian doesn't dare to eat your medicine. How would I dare to? Shui Xian frowned. Her bright and beautiful eyes suddenly turned cold. She said softly, Solitary traveler Grand Emperor, if you don't speak clearly, you won't be able to discern the truth. What do you mean by this? Please elaborate. Chu Yang smiled faintly. Did I not make it clear enough? Then let me make it even clearer. Where is the world's #1 financial magnate now? In the sky? Or underground? Shui Xian's expression was as cold as ice. She looked at him quietly. In the past, for the sake of his daughter's happiness, the great father who didn't hesitate to spend all his wealth. Who killed him in the end? In the past, the Shui clan had many heroes and brothers. Where are they now? In the sky? Or underground? But you, Shui Xian, are now in a high position and you command the world. Chu Yang said coldly, Even a wolf has a heart. But where is your heart? Shui Xian'er's face turned cold as she said, "Take down this arrogant man." She originally wanted to use her talent to negotiate with this solitary traveler Grand Emperor. Then, it would be best if she could subdue him without fighting. The most important achievement of the charm of all living beings that she cultivated was precisely this function. In the past, countless famous experts and experts of the current age had unknowingly fallen for this trick. They had unknowingly been manipulated by her. As long as this Gu Du Xing's fighting spirit was slightly weakened, it would be as easy as blowing off dust to deal with him. She could even manipulate Gu Du Xing to kill all of his companions and then wake him up. This was the most convenient thing that Shui Xian'er could do. It was also the thing that she was most proud of. In the past, she had used this method to defeat powerful enemies countless times. If at that time, Gu Du Xing saw his companions and brothers being killed by her, how could he endure it? Perhaps, Shui Xian'er or the experts of the Holy Emperor Palace would not have to do it personally. Gu Du Xing would have already committed suicide to atone for his crimes. Shui Xian'er had already used this trick too many times. She was not satisfied with it every time. The charm of all living beings was to play with all living beings in the palm of one's hand. Life and death in one's mind. But now, these few words of Gu Du Xing had directly touched upon the biggest taboo in her heart. It was as if her heart had been fiercely scalded by a red-hot iron. This caused Shui Xian'er's mind, which had been as calm as an ancient well for millions of years, to become turbulent and difficult to calm down. In an instant, she flew into a rage. She could no longer maintain her elegant demeanor and directly issued a battle order. With this order, the people of the Holy Emperor Palace rushed up as if they did not care about their lives. Chu Yang and the others suddenly felt a pressure that was several times stronger than before. It was as if Shui Xian'er was standing here. To the people of the Holy Emperor Palace. It was already an excellent stimulant. There was no need to say anything more. It was already enough. How can this be? Probably only a few newbies would do such a childish act of desperately trying to show off in front of a beauty. But these people are all experts. If they did not have extraordinary willpower, how could they have such extraordinary strength? Why would they have such a strange mentality? Chu Yang felt strange as he fought. But he did not know how powerful Shui Xian'er's charm of all living beings was. Not to mention those who had been with her for a long time, or those who had seen her frequently for a long time. Even those who met her for the first time could not help but be awed by her radiance. This was because those who could be charmed by Shui Xian'er were definitely experts among experts. Ordinary people did not have such qualifications. These people had stayed in the Holy Emperor Palace for a long time. Naturally, they had seen Shui Xian'er many times. And every time they saw her, their impression of her would deepen, and they would yearn for her even more. Over the years, they had already worshipped Shui Xian'er as the supreme goddess in their hearts. Now that the goddess had given the order, of course, everyone fought bravely and fought to be the first. Because of this, ever since Shui Xian'er and Cloud Master entered the Holy Emperor Palace, there had never been any betrayals in the palace. Shui Xian'er could be said to have taken great credit for this. This had nothing to do with sex, but she had made herself into an immortal. That kind of cold immortal aura made everyone who saw her feel ashamed of their inferiority, but also fanatically supported her. What was even more fortunate was that the real Gu Duxing was now Chu Yang. Chu Yang cultivated the heaven-splitting divine technique, which was above all the other techniques in the heaven-splitting imperial court. He had also comprehended the true attainments of Tao, which was why he was not bewitched by Shui Xian'er's charm of all living beings. If the real Gu Duxing was here, based on his cultivation, he might not be able to resist the power of charm of all living beings. As long as there was a little bit of insufficient resistance, he would be defeated in an instant. Clang, clang, clang. A huge hand suddenly formed in the sky and covered the whole battlefield of the Holy Emperor Palace without any warning. It slammed down fiercely with the force of a mountain. Chu Yang let out a long roar. Using the posture of the heaven-splitting sword technique, he merged the surging sword energy of What harm is there in slaughtering the entire world? And suddenly unleashed it. A faintly discernible sword energy was spat out along with the momentum. Numerous small transparent holes suddenly appeared in the huge hand that covered the sky above. Then with a boom, it completely exploded. Following the collapse of the huge hand, the buildings around the Holy Emperor Palace also collapsed. The initiators of the huge hand, the 8 saints who attacked together, spat out blood at the same time and fell to the ground in exhaustion. Chu Yang's calamity sword circled around. The sword tip vibrated continuously 8 times at an extremely fast frequency. The heads of the 8 people almost flew up at the same time, and their life essence was also devoured by the calamity sword. A clear and melodious whistle suddenly sounded, and a dreamy red color suddenly appeared in the sky. Heavenly dance. I'm very disappointed today. Very angry. I want to cry. Fuck, I started to lose weight on the 28th of this month. Until today, when I started to lose weight, I was 75 pounds. After going to the toilet today, I weighed myself. I'm 50 pounds now. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.